The person holding it is supposedly the strongest warrior with long black hair and is also dying. He almost succeeded, so he does not deserve the title of the most powerful. He had to kill all the 7-fin demons. But one wonders why on the ancestral king's star, there was an 8-fin demon, and says that humans really failed to underestimate the powers of the demonic beings. Everything would be his fault because he failed to live up to the fame he held. A female demonic being with yellow eyes observes him for a few seconds. He wonders what that creature was trying to do. Soon a male demon approaches his body. Then the man thinks the demon is trying to torment him because he killed many of his subordinates. Losing consciousness, he only saw a glimpse of that monster's eyes. Suddenly we see total darkness, and sadly the man thinks this is his death. But a golden light is seen, and it then becomes stronger as it approaches to the point of covering all his vision. Out of nowhere, he hears a person greeting the newcomers, and the young man widens his eyes. Then he is speechless for a moment. Soon he tries to figure out where he is because he had just died. All that did not seem like a dream because it was too real. He thinks hard and wonders what is happening. He then realizes that this was not his face and all of his physical characteristics had disappeared, and he desperately thinks about who he is, and he wonders where he is at that moment. Zooming out a bit, we can see the building he is in. That city where he was is called Helios. A strong blonde man says that everyone must understand what it means to be part of a warrior exam because the word means protection and hope. This would be Ji Yao, the leader of the 3rd squad of the city. In the year 3069, after the 6 enormous monuments of the ancestral king brought the apocalypse to the world, thousands of demons overflowed from inside them, killing many humans. After experiencing the brutal battle that almost led the race to extinction, humanity finally found a way to fight against the creatures. There's a grafting device there. By recycling the demon's inner cores, humanity was able to use that weapon to temporarily gain strength on the same level as the enemies. 60 years ago, the best and most powerful soldier, who was even called a king, led all the warriors around the world. They fought in what would eventually be known as the Demon Wave in history. The war lasted for many weeks and humanity was plunged into darkness during all that time. Finally, the warriors managed to slow down the demon wave, causing the demons a tremendous and enormous loss. Thanks to this, humanity achieved peace. The protagonist thinks he reincarnated 60 years later. But at the same time, he hears from the blonde that many powerful warriors died, including the strongest human fighter known as Aang. He died in a battle against several high-ranking demons. He also says that the War for Dawn represents the tenacity and determination of the human race in bringing the beginning of a new era of peace, progress, and prosperity. Aang thinks the highest rank level is 8, and that people still do not understand the extent of the demon's capabilities. Then the strong man praises the death of the past fighters. He says that warriors are the pillars of society because they are symbols of protection and hope, and he asks if everyone understands what it means to be a fighter, receiving an affirmative response. The one with yellow eyes soon thinks this is not right. He reasons, murmuring about demons and fins. Everyone stands in a guard position at that moment. Ji Yao says that the protagonist still seems not to understand the meaning of the word, and very intimidatingly he asks him his name. He wonders whether or not to say his true identity. Would everyone believe that he is a reincarnation after 60 years in such a weak and thin body? He decides to speak his real name and is responded to as if it were an insult to have the same identification as the great warrior Aang. He is asked again if his identity is indeed that. Soon after, he is insulted and called a stupid bastard without the slightest bit of warrior spirit, and he still dares to profane such a great and majestic name. Then the blonde-haired one delivers a sharp blow to his face. That body would be so worthless that it couldn't even react to a simple blow, and he can't believe that he has the same name. He is brutally thrown to the ground without any effort by the strong man. He then hears that he will be observed and to prepare for the warrior exam. The leader calls for the attention of the entire troop and says that everyone will continue. Original Aang is immediately asked if he is okay, and if that is really his true name. He responds that at least he is alive. The one helping him is Lan Snow, a friendly warrior in the exam. A girl again asks the protagonist's real name. Seju Liu, who is also a warrior in the exam, quickly diminishes him, saying that his identification will not make him as strong as the supposed Aang. She also calls him very childish and naive. He thinks she is very arrogant, and that his name is none of her business. Snow soon asks if he does not know who she is because she is the most promising warrior there. She is known as the Sulking Rakshasa and is also the eldest daughter of the renowned martial arts family in the city of Helios. That name seemed very familiar to the protagonist, who is helped and lifted by the brown-haired man. They help each other as they are becoming very good friends. Soon a girl arrives and comments on that dazzling display of fraternity. She does not want to disturb them and asks them to continue. She is soon asked who she is and why she is taking pictures of everything. Her name is Suju Yuhui. That friendship relationship had caught her attention. The photos turned out great, but she is not very sane. At the physical fitness test location, Aang thinks that even in that state, he is still the strongest warrior, and that the test would be hilarious and very easy because he would shock everyone with his enormous scores. The red-clad trainer signals the start of the first stage of the endurance running test over a long distance. Aang takes off immediately. He intended to take first place and set a new record. In the last place, he managed to set the goal for the longest time taken to complete the long-distance endurance test. He collapses on the ground, complaining a lot about his horrible, weak body. In the second stage of the test, in the explosive arm strength trial, Aang again comes in last place and injures his wrist by twisting it. He hears about the third part, which was to test the explosive strength in the candidate's legs. It's called an idiot by the girl with long white hair. His results were the worst in history. His scores were ridiculous, placing him in last place, possibly causing his disqualification. Aang laments near his friend, and the girl says that it would probably be the last time she could take pictures of the two together. The trainer comments to Captain Yotang that there would be no reason for the protagonist to continue to the second stage due to his horrific results. So the chief decides to let him participate in the second round, knowing that it would be his last rightful chance. He orders the trainer to start the games immediately, and he has responded to affirmatively. In the second stage, the synchronization of the candidates with the grafting machine will be evaluated. Aang thinks he is in luck and smiles happily. The warriors must head to the evaluation site, and he reasons that he still has a chance to pass the test. 60 years ago, he was the strongest with a stable synchronization rate of over 96%. His body is not athletic at all, but the score will be given by the willpower of each one, and he will get revenge on those who mocked his results. He will show how much the synchronization rate of the strongest warrior can reach. Aang realizes that the equipment has become much lighter after 60 years. Segu Liu passes with an average of 39% in the test, and that would probably be the highest score for that year. Those who train from a young age in martial arts families are indeed very different. A sulking Rakshasa would be one of those people. Everyone imagines how they would hit on such a wonderful and dazzling girl and are called brats by the protagonist. Finishing the test, the girl comes out of the machine shaking her white and silky hair. Everything went as expected because she has received very intense training since she was little. She is really too talented and looks beautiful even with a ponytail. All the others are just mere extras. She is truly an unattainable person. Segu Liu achieved a staggering 39% and caused a stir in everyone. The girl does not mind having more admirers, but it is still better to be discreet and maintain her posture. The protagonist is impressed with the evaluation result and is asked about his opinion regarding her. His friend says that she is full of energy and anger inside a delicate body, and he agrees. Aang doesn't seem nervous because he is very used to it. The brown-haired one wonders how the protagonist would be used to this. During the evaluation, many novices who endure the machine had faces of great suffering and pain. The first time someone undergoes the graft, an enormous burden is placed on their body due to the impact of the demonic core. Many give up because they can't withstand the tremendous pain. The synchronization rate needs to reach at least 10% to pass, and Aang's friend passed with 24%. And obviously, there were also some unexpected scores, like Suju Yuhui, who passed with 30% synchronization. The chief says that this time, some seeds with great potential were found, including the green-eyed girl, and that evaluation had 6 examinees with a rate equal to or higher than 30% compared to other ranked cities. The current batch of novice warriors is of very good quality. Yo thinks for a few seconds, and says that there are also some inferior ones looking fixedly at Aang, who would have very low potential. Everyone was apprehensive about the protagonist's turn and underestimated him greatly. He thinks they can laugh all they want, they are very inexperienced, and that he will shut everyone up later. Aang informs that he will want the red strength core. Recycled demonic cores from the battlefield can be separated into 6 categories, with red, yellow, green, and blue being the most common. Red represents strength, yellow defense, green healing, and blue agility. On the other hand, the purple core corresponds to imaginary power and the black one to space and time. It is very rare and especially difficult to find. Aang prepares on the machine to start everything. He readies himself for synchronization right there. The most important thing would be his willpower. The core was already positioned in its respective place. A person's determination dictates how much they can withstand the burden. Moreover, it also determines one's mastery over the core. The graft was successful and the protagonist was already prepared. He is asked if he is ready, and he immediately responds to start the test. In the hall, an enormous red light appears. It would be a very strong reaction. Everyone questions the veracity of that person being Aang. He shows his group what the synchronization rate of the true strongest warrior in all history is like. The brown-haired one says that Aang was hiding his talent. The synchronization rate was still rising and instantly reached 40%. Aang is confused because his rate was still low. He had once achieved a synchronization rate of 96%. He makes a lot of effort for the numbers to rise even more, and the machine's wires become very tense. The results were still rising a lot, but the test wasn't over. It rose from 45% to 60%. Yet wonders what is happening and how he can have such an absurd synchronization rate. Maybe there is an error because the scores were getting better and better. Everyone is confused about what is going on and whether Aang is cheating or if the equipment is broken. The protagonist was once the strongest warrior considered a king by others, but the core in his body were low level. His intimidating conduct had made everyone bow before him. That would be the difference between them. His eyes show all the strength he had. Suddenly, he starts to fall into an enormous void. The stone in his chest becomes very red and shines brightly. Everything seems like a demon put him in that state. He wonders what happened because all his strength had disappeared. The machine starts to turn very red and electrified. At the final stretch, very tired, he spits blood. Aang says he can't go on because that body can't take it anymore, and the machine was really defective. The synchronization rate instantly dropped to 10%. Amedi tells the chief that the demonic core was cracked and had a reading failure because it was defective. Yao, because of his nervousness, sighs very deeply. And it is stated that the synchronization rate stopped at an extremely low level, and that the candidate did not pass the test and also felt very unwell. The warrior was on the ground, fallen and unconscious. Many try to help him, but others mock him a lot because his body was weak, and his synchronization rate was extremely low. His friend immediately asks if he is okay, while the white-haired girl observes everything. She celebrates because she almost lost her position as the most wonderful in the city. She would never accept that. It was all her fault for trying to compete with brats, but she is happy because she managed to pass the test. The protagonist in the hall wonders what that was, as it seemed to come from the inside of his heart and sucked all his power in an instant. He laments a lot because he had the potential for a great result and finds it strange that the stone broke in such a way. Very thoughtful, he keeps looking at the door as someone would be there. Then the chief arrives, asking for everyone's attention. He soon enters the hall very fearlessly and determinedly. He congratulates everyone for reaching the final round of evaluations, Now it would be time for the practical test. They will now face a real demon for the first time in their lives. The chief hopes that everyone can pass this test safely and without many problems. He orders everyone to line up and head towards evaluation field 3. Aang is very weak and says he will die at the leader's feet, who then looks at him with a very disappointed expression. He then observes the ground and sees something very shiny red. He goes towards the object and picks it up with his hand. The thing shines brightly under his fingers. He squeezes the stone and says he is really curious about Aang. The very tired protagonist keeps running, yet wonders what he will show him in the next evaluation of hunting in the fog beyond the walls. Already at the enormous evaluation field 3, it is requested that all gates be open for the warriors to enter the location. Stationary workers are seen amidst a lot of smoke. It would be the first time they would leave the city and wonder about the fog. Aang says that even after 60 years, people still live in isolated cities. The trainer orders them to be quiet, leave the city, and check the equipment in their spare time as they might end up dead without even knowing the reason. Aang received a new core, but the problem probably wasn't there because his power had vanished all at once as if something in his body rejected it. But what was going on could be a side effect of reincarnation. He starts walking towards the gate. He then feels very strange imagining his exit. Everything around him would be in black and white. Some moles are seen by him in his imagination. They roar with very sharp teeth, and then they run quickly forward. They enter a very dark and enormous cave. Some sound waves come out of that place and seem to get bigger and bigger. At the end of the place, many skulls are seen and a huge monster sitting on a throne. It would be the cause of that enormous noise. That would be a demon stronger than the protagonist. He wonders what that was and what the things he saw were, as he felt like there was some resonance deep in his heart. Then he is asked if he is going to move or not. The one who asked was the girl with white hair and green pants. He then apologizes shyly. Snow soon questions what is wrong with his great friend. Then they are ordered to form a group of 4. Everyone else who is already prepared should hurry up and go to the trainer. Suju asks if that was a strategy by Aang to form a team, and he replied negatively. The white-haired girl tells him just not to mess up the team. She thinks to herself that it was scary because she was very worried that no one would want to team up with her. Snow encourages Aang to do their best. The green-eyed team member records everything on her camera and says that the team is formed. In the place, there is a gray dispersion monument made of a solid stone mixture that contains a special substance inside capable of dispersing the fog. They will go through the evaluation in teams of 4 members, and everyone should already know about the hunt in the fog beyond the walls. Each team will receive combat daggers and a mini fog dispersion device made of the same material as the monument. The mission is straightforward. It consists of entering the smoke and heading to the designated areas with flashing lights. Insert the device to disperse the fog and hunt finless demons. Individual strength and team cooperation will determine the passing or failing of the test. Hunt in the fog beyond the walls is the terrifying final test that novices must face in this smoke-covered world. The warriors must face the unknown dangers hiding in the mist. Good physique and skill are not the only qualities one needs to become a good fighter. A strong mentality, ignoring their fears regarding the fog, the ability to cooperate and trust their team while facing the unknown, along with the ability to overcome their own fears, are the most essential qualities for good performance in the test. Observe the area well, fight with the demons that appear randomly, and earn the title of warrior by achieving your first kill. One of the actions was already completed, and the next team should prepare. In this batch, there are many exceptional novices, but the target of interest for the red-haired woman is Sedu Liu. This woman is Dada Gel, leader of the 3rd squad of the city of Helios. She asks the other leaders who else interest them among these warriors. Joel, leader of the 1st squad of the city of Helios, says that Sedu Liu can become a great warrior if well guided. Yao says there is another person worth watching. He would be talking to his teammates. He would be Aang, the boy with black hair and yellow eyes. The chief has sent his core for analysis and wonders what went wrong in the past. Someone gives his ear a little pinch while he was thinking. Then he is called Tang Ting and asked what he was pondering at that moment. He gets very angry and is teased because Dada Gel always managed to make him very mad. The blue-haired pink-eyed one says that if any appear, they must do everything to protect the new batch of warriors. The current group's evaluation has ended. The next battle station has been set up. The next group should prepare, and it's the protagonist group. It would be their turn now. They affirm with much enthusiasm and joy. Suddenly, someone grabs Aang's equipment very quickly, grabs it and takes off running. He looks at his hand very confused as his object disappeared out of nowhere. Sedu Liu, with the equipment in her hands, calls everyone and asks them to make sure to follow her because she was dazzling. The protagonist gets very angry because the girl likes to steal the spotlight every time she has the opportunity. Again, they are told to follow her, running very fast. She makes a huge leap with her hair in the wind. A lot of fog is seen and everyone runs amid low visibility. The whole team runs very fast and diligently while she makes a huge backflip with her white hair flying around her head. Still in her jump, she holds the dagger and the equipment very firmly in her hands. She observes the point where the red light is shining and manages to fixate on it very successfully, reaching an objective. The red-haired woman says that she has the healing core, but her physique does not lose to those with the agility core, so she's impressed by the girl's action. Many demons appear. One of them has no left eye, and its teeth are enormous, white, and sharp. 3 of them run towards Sedu Liu, roaring loudly. Aang orders Snow to advance, receiving an affirmative response. Len soon starts running frantically. His eyes turn yellow and emit rays of the same color as his eyeballs. Soon after, he makes a huge leap towards Sedu Liu. He lands on the ground bravely while she observes. All the demons become very angry and enraged at him. An enormous battle ensues between the 4 as the monsters decide to attack him. The chief says he is doing well and has gotten used to using the core's powers. Snow holds the dagger tightly between his fingers and orders everyone to kill one opponent at a time. Tomo responds affirmatively, and Lee responds in a very mocking and proud tone as if she didn't need that order. They prepare with their feet firmly on the ground. Very determined, the group prepares for everyone to act together to increase their strength and chances of bravely winning the difficult battle. It would be the first round between Tomo and a monster. She widens her beautiful green eyes, staring at the beast. Then she delivers a huge blow to its abdomen, making the monster fly. Then she gives another blow to the demon's face, which bleeds a lot from its mouth. She then stands firmly on the demon's back, then making a huge leap on top of it, breaking its spine in half, killing it right there. Snow, also in battle, punches another demon in the abdomen with great force. The same is thrown very far away with that strong punch. Observing all of this, the blue-haired boy says their work is surprisingly good, especially the girls, as the blue agility core has enhanced the rhythm of her movements. The leader immediately asks what he is looking at. Round 2 is Seidu Liu against the next opponent. She stares fixedly at her enemy and makes a huge leap with the dagger firmly in her hands towards the monster. Very strongly, she delivers the fatal blow and sinks the weapon even deeper into the opponent's body. The monster expels a lot of green liquid, screaming desperately from the pain it was feeling at that moment. Soon after, she lands on the ground fearlessly with her hair flying after that feat, and she celebrates her mastery in killing the monster. It explodes behind her as she moves away from the place. Eagerly awaited, round 3 would be Aang against another demonic being. He manages to strike the monster in its torso with great force, throwing it very far. He thinks about hitting his opponent in vital areas first. First, the blow was to the creature's neck. Second, its chest was struck strongly. The blows are very fast and make enormous noises. And lastly, its abdomen, which is also a very sensitive and vital area of its body. Then the monster is launched again very far after the strong blows suffered. Aang quickly realizes that his body is fragile and can only withstand a limited amount of power at once. He should use this chance to test his limit in a real battle. Then he lands on the ground with great skill and goes in search of another opponent to bravely defeat. The demon tries to land a very strong blow on his face, but fails as Aang quickly dodges the punch and is not afraid of it, continuing to advance on the beast nonetheless. And soon after, the protagonist strikes his enemy with a blow to its chest, then quickly thinks that he did not react fast enough. The beast tries to land a fatal kick on the protagonist's face, but he dodges, being very agile at the moment. Then he holds the sharp dagger firmly in his hand, as he prepares to counterattack his enemy fatally. Soon after, while striking the monster in its belly, he realizes that his body's coordination is also very bad and inferior to what it was before. The demon's sharp teeth were bloody due to the frantically violent battle. The fight between the two is very intense and well contested on both sides. Aang's defense equipment heads towards the monster's body with the intention of finishing the battle. A precise blow is delivered to the demon, making it scream in pain. But the protagonist soon realizes that he does not have enough explosive power. The demonic beast falls to the ground in front of Aang. He holds the silver dagger firmly in his hands while his friends observe everything there, very impressed. Snow says his great friend seems to be playing with the opponent. Everyone gets excited about that, but Liu says he is stealing the scene and does it on purpose. The chief asks who that very skinny boy is, as he is very impressive and fearless. The blue-haired one agrees and says he also moves like a true veteran. Yo becomes very thoughtful about everything he just heard. Very tired, the protagonist stands in front of his opponent, bleeding a lot. And then, to conclude the whole fight, he thinks that with that body he cannot use his old skills, as he was out of breath after a few movements, and all of that would be terrible. After a while, he had finished self-assessing. Then it was already time for the monster to die right there. As everything's about to end, something red emerges from the ground. The protagonist widens his yellow eyes, watching it rise very close to him. Suddenly, the thing strikes the monster's body, killing it, while Aang is thrown far away due to the force of the impact. The protagonist wonders what that was, being answered by the pink-haired girl, confirming that they were surrounded by tree roots. A kind of paw emerges from the ground with very sharp claws, making a lot of noise. On one of these claws, the demon would already be lifeless, bleeding a lot with it stuck in its chest. What was causing all that havoc finishes, emerging with a very scary appearance. Aang looks at that creature very impressed as green blood flows around it. It would be an enormous powerful monster with sharp teeth and very large claws. It roars, making a lot of noise to intimidate everyone present at the moment. The sound is so loud that it is immediately heard above the fortress. From atop the wall, the leaders look on stunned. Yo becomes very worried, observing what is happening. He widens his eyes and laments with great fear. It is then discovered that this is a Finn demon. Quickly, everyone runs and retreats to the city in despair, as that monster is very powerful. The masters on standby leap from the building they were on, raising a lot of dust and dirt around the area. All that smoke covers the surroundings, reducing visibility greatly. They run bravely with the intention of helping their students in trouble. The red-haired woman calms everyone down, saying for them to stay calm because Jia Yotang will accompany them back to the city. The monster quickly says that it would be a human, but the smell is of a demon. Aang quickly processes what the beast said, very confused and scared. The monstrous being wonders which of those people has a different smell from the normal. Everyone observes that horrendous creature with great astonishment and fear, and they question if that would be a Finn demon because it was very different from the low-level monsters they had before. Seidu Liu, being captured by the roots, says she cannot move her body at all. Aang quickly realizes that his body is no match for a first-level demon. For the first time, he is feeling the oppression that normal warriors feel when facing a Finn demon. The monster brings its claws towards the protagonist, asking him to tell what he is hiding. Then it says it will take everyone there while its claws shine a very strong red light. From its nails, a laser shoots toward the heads of all four in the group. Their eyes turn white and their faces take on a very dead expression. Then they fall to the ground unconscious with the monster in front of them. The monster tries to create a huge crack in the ground. Quickly, the two chiefs arrive very heroically. The blue-haired chief tells the demon not to dare touch his soldiers, but it doesn't care about the chief's words and mocks him. It creates huge roots around itself, initiating its farewell. It finishes its greeting amid the brown tree trunks. A huge and deep hole is created in front of the leaders. They look at the hole, stunned and disbelieving, and quickly wonder if it took the four examinees with it. The enormous cavity has two huge tree trunks coming from its bottom along with a lot of fog. A huge noise is heard from within. Then the blue-haired one orders to go after them quickly. A huge mass of trees and green leaves is seen. Their journey would end there. The red-haired woman says that Tang Tang had checked that place for several days, so how could a Finn demon appear despite all the care taken? That had never happened in the past. Quickly, he now arrives at the place flying, calling the names of the two. He then asks where the children are. He also questions why they stopped and orders them to continue searching for the missing children. The blue-haired one tells him to calm down because the trail ends right there in front of him. The other chief present says the demon dug underground in flight as soon as it arrived at the place and that the area ahead is not safe to advance into. Tang places his white-gloved hands on the dirty ground, and soon has a deja vu of his younger brother calling his name desperately as he was taken by a huge creature. Then he gives a huge punch to the ground in great anger, cursing that demon and cracking the ground around him. Then he says that everything that happened was his fault because he should have checked the place properly. He repeats again, taking all the blame. The pink-eyed one tells them to return because the people in the city must be freaking out, and the three of them cannot stay away from there at all. They would send an exploration group to check the surroundings of the place, searching for other demons. The red-haired woman remains silent, listening. Then she tries to console Yao because none of them wanted this to happen, but they need to calm down even though they feel terrible at that moment. She tries to make physical contact with her great friend. Then he says that the two of them should go back first and not to worry because he would search a little more for the missing group. The blue-haired one tries to reprimand Tang's action, but he is interrupted by the red-haired one who agrees and just asks him to return before sunset. He says he already knows that information, and then he takes off running ahead. In conversation, it becomes clear that the two wouldn't be able to convince him because his brother was captured by a demon in the past, and he has been blaming himself for it ever since. The blue-eyed one says that if Yo's younger brother were still alive, he would be about the age of the missing children, and that surely those teenagers reminded him of his missing family member. Meanwhile, in a very dark and gloomy cave, Aang wonders where he is and if that place is the underground. Soon after, he becomes optimistic because at least everyone is still alive. Quickly, the monster asks if he has awakened. He glares at the beast with a face full of anger and rage, and then he quickly realizes that it is indeed a Finn demon. The demonic being tells him that he woke up very quickly and that he is indeed very different from the norm, and that he is very curious about that fact. Aang stares at him with extreme alertness, paying close attention to everything. The monster then punches hard where he was tied up, and quickly wonders why he has the same smell as a demon and even stronger than usual. Aang ponders, his face bleeding heavily and very confused about what that being was saying at that moment. He then quickly bursts all the ropes around his body with all his strength. Then he falls to the ground, standing in front of the demonic being. Then he prepares to deliver a strong blow to his enemy. He manages to hit him and makes him stunned after the punch. Soon after, the monster is surprised by his enthusiasm. They then engage in a frantic fight. The monster runs very fast towards the protagonist. Aang quickly thinks that his former self would have ended that battle before his enemy could even react. He also reasons that he has to save the other three members of his group. He decides quickly to advance bravely towards his opponent. It is evident that he is a red-cord demon because he is agile and has good reactions and attacks, but also his joints lose the protection of his tough skin. The monster quickly says that it is very useless and points his claws at the protagonist, holding him tightly in one of his hands. Aang tries to find a strategy to defeat his opponent. He was always looking for a weakness in him, like the ones in his joints. The protagonist tries to hit one of his opponent's weaknesses and ends up succeeding because he manages to injure one of the monster's upper limbs, who screams intensely in pain with red liquid flowing from his body. Aang tells his opponent not to underestimate him because he is weak and of his species. He has already defeated many several times. The monster groans in pain after the blow, but suddenly the demon drives his claws into the protagonist, who screams loudly in pain with a lot of red liquid coming out of his mouth. The monster retrieves his severed arm. On the wall where he hit the protagonist, there is a huge hole. Under the concavity is the black-haired boy with green pants, lying very weak due to the unexpected blow. His opponent mocks him because, even knowing his weakness, he is of the wood class with the red wood core, and it turns out that he can heal himself very easily. The protagonist quickly reasons about his opponent's healing because only demons with green cores could heal, and his opponent was of the wood class. Then he quickly thinks that after half a century, demons might have also evolved. Aang, who underestimated his opponent without even realizing what he was doing, the demonic being makes a gesture with his long, sharp nail, and soon the protagonist is drawn by the gesture of his fingers, being pulled close to the creature, without a chance to react, who grabs him by the face with his hands, holding him tightly with the claws on his head. The demonic being does not understand the human who was there. Aang quickly thinks that his vital organs were pierced because it hurts a lot, and that he has little time since his reincarnation and is already about to die again, and that all his friends would also die along with him. They would die exactly like his companions from the past life right in front of him. He apologizes to all of his teammates and then says he cannot accept that death. The demon then thinks that human is weak and already dead. Then he wonders about his evolution with the possibility of eating his opponent to evolve. He then opens his mouth with an enormous sharp and pointed tongue intending to devour the protagonist. But something was about to happen right there. The monster wonders what is happening to that human and is thrown far away with the black-haired boy glowing with a red light. Something from within Aang says that he cannot die there like this or all his plans will fall apart. His red core begins to crack and make a noise. The entity cannot believe that the last fragment of its consciousness would be used there in that way. The monster understands nothing of what is happening to his opponent. It is terrifying. Aang seems to be transforming into a 5 or even 6-fin demon. He screams with the core in his chest very active and red, floating with a lot of smoke with a reddish pigment coming out of his lungs. His hands begin to turn into paws with enormous sharp claws. His body starts to turn red and his hair very white. A transformation is happening there. From his chest comes an enormous red explosion that cracks the cave's columns, and soon after it reaches the skies, being visible from afar so that all the demons outside the cave can hear. They look desperately and tensely at what they see, and many of them degrade with that event. Finally, the light begins to diminish a bit and return to the cave where the main character is. He had transformed into the only 8-finned demon that exists, the strongest existence of the Crimson Crystal, the so-called king of his opponent. The one-finned demon looks at him very confused with his extraordinarily high level. The incorporation demands that his inferior kneel before him. Without hesitation, he quickly does what his chief commands. Incorporated Aang flies to the skies with his enormous wings and orders his subject to state his name. He quickly proclaims the name of his Crimson-Finned king. The main character, now incorporated, appears very different and powerful from what he was before. Moments before, outside the cave, Yo tries to approach, searching for the missing children. He looks attentively in all directions, hoping to find them. A huge green monster is sighted. The leader then tries to surprise it with a blow, hitting the creature in the middle of its chest, making it scream in pain. Another demonic being tries to attack him from behind. He quickly hits it with a huge kick to its mouth, which also makes it moan in agony and despair. He had finished patrolling the area. There were only two two-finned demons in that area, and the children were not there. He would have to continue searching tirelessly, and he would have to find the teenagers before it gets dark and night falls. Then the leader sees that red ray coming from underground. The red sound waves are so strong that they spread around him. He observes and wonders what wave of energy that is, and it probably came from that direction. He quickly thinks that the people he was looking for would be there. Meanwhile, in the cave, the incorporation begins to descend from the sky towards his subject. His toenails grow automatically, and he lands with his two legs firmly on the ground. He is immediately called king by his inferior who is in front of him. He never thought the sky would remain so dark as before his return, and he immediately orders the monster answer the question he is about to ask. He asks if by chance the demon lords are still the same 5 that existed before. The demonic being responds affirmatively because they remain in the same position as before the king disappeared. All 5 seem to live very well and peacefully with each other. The yellow eyes of the demon king shine with a tone of vengeance and wrath. It seems that his enemies forgot what they did to him 60 years ago. He had chosen Aang's body as a vessel because he was the strongest soldier, but after reincarnating, that body became really weak and a disappointment. That had been his last consciousness and was wasted in a ridiculous situation, and he could probably only make one more appearance at the moment of this full awakening. He touches his chin with his very sharp and pointed claw. Someone was really testing his patience. He needs to wait for Aang's slow awakening so he can understand the memories of the Finns. The king is then asked about the memories and if they are the ones used when a demonic being evolves. The Finns appear and draw attention on their bodies. The number of Finns determines the levels of strength. The more, the higher the level they will have. The leader cultivated new Finns requiring the memories. It is a special ability of that species. That is the reason the race always remains superior to others, being Aang the same. Except that they need to devour someone of their own species and same level to evolve. What all the protagonist needs to do is devour demons of a higher level than his to gain and understand the Finn memories and consequently evolve in level. This is a little gift from the king to Aang. The demonic being says he will support the king and be his left and right hand and help him awaken definitively. But soon the king looks at him very proudly and tells him that he is not worthy of doing that. For the only value he finds in him at that moment is to help the human warrior awaken the memories of the first Finn. The king had prepared the first step for Aang and did not want him to disappoint him. He needs the protagonist to awaken one step at a time towards the 8th Finn. He leaves a suspense about when the right time will come. While the king disincorporates from Aang's body as his core receives a kind of DNA, he ends the suspense by saying that he will awaken one more time from his sleep. Aang receives a lot of new energy in his chest directly into the core. A kind of fusion is made inside with his genes and those of his incorporator. Slowly, the 8-Finn demon shrinks. Aang, kneeling, is touched by several hands in the process. The king moves away from his host's body, which is soon wrapped in his vestiges. A yellow light is seen in the dark. Someone calls out the name of his king, the same who is the strongest leader of all. His subject asks not to die, saying that a female being is still waiting for his return. The king responds that he will not perish and will definitely get everyone out of there. They hold each other's hands firmly, and then looking at each other, they die tragically right there. But still, someone was still alive around. Aang widens his eyes and wakes up in a hospital bed and realizes that he was only dreaming. But actually, they weren't dreams, but many memories. Snow soon calls out to his friend very enthusiastically. Everyone in his group celebrates the fact that he has awakened after so long. The pink-haired girl soon comes close to him and observes his head and quickly asks why his hair changed suddenly, perhaps because of the demon gate. He does not understand what his friend is talking about. The protagonist asks if the 3 of them are okay because he remembers they were in the cave because of that Finn demon. Yo soon arrives, opening the curtain and asking if Aang remembers anything. Finishing opening all the fabric around the bed, he asks the protagonist to tell what happened in the cave immediately. The 3 captains were present in the hospital. The red-haired one says that Tang Tang brought them back. The blonde captain gets very angry with that nickname and scolds her, but again she calls him by a shameful name. All the warriors are thoughtful about that nickname they heard. One of the chiefs says that all 4 were found unconscious outside the cave. He also says that thank God the Finn demon was not nearby because if it had been, the rescue would have been very difficult. The red-haired one says that the 3 group members woke up first but did not remember what had happened and that Aang was the only one to fall into a coma. She also tells him to remember what happened in the cave while he observes, stunned by the changes in his hair. He wonders what happened because everything is so different since he reincarnated, including his hair. Regarding the cave, Aang only remembers fainting at some point. What happened after that he is not very sure. He wonders if he should tell everything, including the fact that he reincarnated, but then decides to remain silent for obvious reasons. He then says he only remembers waking up quickly in a cave and that's why he has memories from there and then fainting again and waking up in the hospital. Tang then ponders if those arguments are indeed true. He also thinks about the blood he found staining a wall inside the cave. Soon the blue-haired chief asks the protagonist's name. He also comments on his results and actions during the battle against demons, and then finally asks if Aang has ever fought against a demonic being before. He has answered negatively because the protagonist lies, saying that he's just very interested in fights and gathered information by analyzing each opponent's weaknesses. The red-haired chief immediately commends her warrior, praising him and wishing for more fighters like him. So Aang asks about the results of his evaluations. The cute member of his group quickly responds that he had passed and that the team was still intact. His friends give him the news that Captain Tang Tang made them a real team and that they count on the protagonist. Liu says that compared to the other teams, they are very behind. Aang then asks if they are behind the other teams, being answered by Tang that for a team to pass, they need to accumulate points. But since he was in a coma for 3 days, the points were still obtained. Extremely surprised by the number of days he was unconscious, the protagonist lets out a huge scream that could be heard from outside the hospital. Sedu Liu adjusts her white, silky hair, while Snow and the girl in orange pants also prepare. Aang was already ready during his group's preparation. After the team leaves the hospital, the whole population is surprised to see them. They comment a lot about the new group of warriors because they were very young and held enormous responsibility. The blonde explains all the rules to them but first congratulates the team. They had officially become true warriors. Everyone had faced a Finn demon and managed to return safely, being congratulated again for their luck. Tang warns them that they are under his care along with 9 of their teams and says they must stand out among the others. Aang wonders about the rules for becoming a warrior because in the past, they were stricter, and it was quite difficult to rise in ranks. Snow then asks if he knows about the squad rankings. Segu Liu ruins her companion's honor by saying that they are the team with the lowest score in the ranking. Tang says that standing out among the others refers to the team's score and that a healthy competition should happen between the other 8 squads. He also explains how to earn points and the positioning along with the awards. In this way, each responsible captain has a team in last place in the ranking that must be punished. This team will be demoted to the cleaning team and will have to wait until the following month for the post to be exchanged with another squad. Aang then understands why everything there is so clean. The rules had already been given, and they could not relax at any time because the demons evolve. Segu Liu will be the group leader due to her high evaluation score. Everyone agrees, but the protagonist thinks he should be the leader because of his majestic past. The team leader steps forward. She affirms that her team will successfully complete the given missions while boasting about the position she had taken at that moment. Tang says that since it is still quite early, they can choose the type of task they will take on, and that they should also look at the rival team's scores. He also asks them to get used to the Graf's suits and call him if something is wrong with them. Then he dismisses all his soldiers right after. Sidu Liu immediately orders them to go look at the mission board and the other squad's rankings because they are many days behind and will have to work hard to catch up. The pink-haired girl tells them to wait because there is something more important to do at that moment. Sidu Liu quickly thinks of many things she might have forgotten and whether that would make her less efficient and perfect in her job. But they had just forgotten to record the moment. The cute girl holds her camera firmly with her eyes shining. Aang questions the teams as a whole and concludes that it is not so bad. Quickly, everyone in the group takes a beautiful photo together, happy and very enthusiastic. Meanwhile, the chiefs discuss the Finn demons exploding near the cave. Inside the place, there were signs of blood from an unknown demon spread all over. The pink-eyed one insinuates, asking Tang if the children did that. Yao is quite suspicious of Aang and thinks he did those things because his nose is very sensitive, and the protagonist has a very familiar smell to demons. The red-haired one immediately says that Tang Tang is exaggerating and that with the children safe and back, everything is fine. She also tells him that they are a very strong team and should take care not to lose to her team. The blue-haired one blows out the smoke from the cigarette he was smoking and tells Tang to keep an eye on the protagonist and inform them if anything's out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, at the mission board in the city center, Aang notices that there are 3 rank missions to be done and that they are worth a lot of points. Snow and the pink-haired girl quickly comment on the difficulty of those tasks, while Segu Liu thinks hard looking at the board. The brown-haired boy says that rank B and C missions are the easiest but worth fewer points, while level A missions are extremely difficult and always end with damage. Aang then confirms that he understood the information. He was about to reconsider his decision, but Segu Liu quickly steps in front of him and says that they will take all the difficult missions on the board. The 4 run very fast towards the next challenge. Aang places his hands on his core, which glows brightly. Something begins to emerge from it, and soon it starts to stick to his back. Those might be nano wings to assist him. The wings integrate completely into his body. Something inside him tells him to imagine his equipment disintegrating and transforming into a weapon. Suddenly, a golden dagger appears in his hands. He is impressed by the technological evolution in the last 60 years. The leader then asks if everyone is ready, and they unanimously respond affirmatively. The targets are 2 finless demons to be killed one at a time. The order to move forward is given immediately. Everyone in the group advances, focused and determined to complete the mission. The demons see them and glare with looks of rage and fury. They roar loudly to intimidate everyone. Segu Liu thinks that they have 3 more rank missions to complete, so they can't waste time here and have to finish this quickly. First, Snow will block the opponent's line of sight. He delivers a kick that makes the demons collide with each other. They become quite dazed and confused by what happened. Aang and Tomo will incapacitate the opponents. The 2 move towards the demonic beings, joining forces to increase their combat strength. They prepare, holding their daggers firmly to attack. Aang can hardly wait to see his opponents writhing in pain after a precise blow to their joints. The monsters are very angry and furious. Snow then prepares to deliver a massive punch to them, and with all his might he lands a precise blow, causing the demons to stagger back, blood pouring from their mouths as Segu Liu approaches. To finish everything magnificently, she delivers several strikes with her dagger, landing on the ground very satisfied and proud. She had executed a move that handled the demons' overload. Liu celebrates her performance, which was splendid once again. The fog was clearing from the surroundings. Tomo notes this and affirms that the equipment was inserted perfectly and correctly. Snow celebrates the mission's completion and highlights the fact that the rank mission of dissipating the fog was much more difficult than those they had during evaluations. The group earned a beautiful red core. Tomo celebrates this with energy and enthusiasm. The leader thanks everyone for the points and their dedication, while Aang is impressed with the mission board's technology. Tomo says that the new technologies focus on exterminating demons and that the jobs have a chip linked to the city's point board and they are quickly updated. One task was already completed, but two very difficult ones remained. Tomo feels sad about the small number of cores they obtained and the difficulty of the missions, but Snow jokes about those facts. Stater Liu says they will stick to the plan they had devised earlier. They will finish the two remaining missions and quickly take on more tasks to reach the top of the rankings afterward. Snow and Tomo praise their leader and the decisions she makes. The brown-haired one asks his brother what he thinks and is told to speak more formally with his friend. Aang motivates the team significantly given the circumstances, saying that God helps those who rise early so they will succeed. He thinks that his heart would be quite cold after living for more than half a century between two lives, but after spending time with his squad, he feels that youthful passion for life again, which excites anyone. He orders them to seek to complete the mission before the sun sets. Tomo jumps with joy and enthusiasm while Liu gets angry because Aang had stolen her lines. As the sun was setting, Snow finished tying up another opponent, and the group had finally captured 3 live demons. The tranquilizers for finless demons were already gone, but each team had only received a few special bullets. The weapon makes a strange noise as it runs out of bullets, and Aang looks at it, confused about what it could be. Steady Liu loses her patience because the novice knows nothing about the equipment and explains the function and creation of each one to him. He's thoughtful about the evolution that had happened because in his time tranquilizers were already used to capture demons. In the past, warriors had to knock out demons with their bare hands, and researchers always complain about the damage caused to the creature's brains. Snow celebrates the successful completion of the mission but highlights the fact that several demonic beings also died during the task. Around the group there are various monster corpses. Tomo quickly warns that the warriors must return to the city before sunset, and that if they don't follow the law, they will surely be punished severely. She then calls everyone to return home and have a nice meal. Aang then thinks that he doesn't know if his reincarnation has a place to stay. Stigo Liu will also return to her dojo and will send the coordinates for the researchers to collect the demons and mark the mission as completed. Suddenly, they feel a murderous aura around them. A shot cuts through the air near them. Aang and Tomo look around desperately and fearfully after that. A voice emerges, saying that the group cannot be allowed to complete the mission. A lot of smoke comes from where the shot originated. Snow quickly asks who is there. A new group appears, and their leader asks about the novice team and why they took all the rank of missions, as his group was supposed to take on those tasks. Aang then asks who these strangers are. They are the Black Weapon team who joined squad leader Ji Yotang in the last evaluation. They would be one of the 9 rival teams and were theoretically superior. The leader asked a member of his team how many new squads there are, being answered with the exact number of 3. All the others were rebels because they had not shown any respect yet. He takes a huge step forward and complains that they didn't ask for permission to take the rank of missions. He also says that their opponents don't seem to take them seriously. Liu then looks at the bleeding demon on the ground, standing still for a moment with wide eyes, and thinks about the effort they had put into capturing those demonic beings. Soon the red-haired one asks who the team leader is and why they haven't greeted them until now. Seju Liu becomes furious and lunges at him, landing a very strong punch on his face. He then asks how they dare attack them and calls them rebels. Liu retorts, asking how he has the audacity to place himself in a position of superiority. The group tries to stop the leader from attacking again because that other group is still a veteran, and everything should be resolved in a calm conversation. Tomo says that they are very irrational and couldn't have killed the demons they captured with so much hard work and sweat. The red-haired leader ponders that statement and retorts, saying that competition is indeed irrational and they are all very knave. Sidu Liu gets very angry at being called knave. She thinks she will not bow her head because that group had ruined all the hard work that lasted the whole afternoon. Snow calls Aang to notify the chief because the sun is already setting, but he rushes like a bullet towards the rival group, making a huge leap preparing to hit the red-haired leader, telling him to go to hell, and delivers an extremely strong kick to his face. All the other warriors in the group are very worried about their commander. Aang finds it extremely ridiculous for a veteran group to oppress the novices and thinks he has never seen anyone so clueless even in his past life. The protagonist group watches everything very apprehensively and worried about the situation. The boy with the white streak is called a bastard by the veteran leader for treating him so badly, and he quickly orders his Black Weapon group to prepare for battle. They quickly comply with the order affirmatively. Sivu Liu also commands them to fight. An enormous battle then breaks out between them. Soon a very deep and angry voice is heard by everyone. Suddenly, Yao steps in front of the whole fight, separating the two warriors, preventing them from hurting each other. He prepares all his strength for a moment and throws them far away from each other. The red-haired one falls in front of the rival group, and Aang falls before the veteran group, thinking that he wanted to fight to see the level of the current warriors. Then squad leader Ji Yotang steps forward. Yao asks if they don't value their lives because the sun is setting, and they will become demon food if they keep fighting there. The veteran leader says it was the novices who started the fight, and he is even without his mask because of it. Segu Liu mocks him, saying he is whining like a little kid. Tomo says they have photographic evidence that the veterans killed the 3 captured demons, calling them shameless, and Snow is quite surprised by that. Yao then asks if the novices took on a rank mission. Liu quickly reveals that they had already completed the task, but the Black Weapon group destroyed all their efforts. Tang responds to the leader affirmatively with a disappointed expression on his face. He also says it may seem exaggerated, but they went through the same thing when they were novices, that their reaction depends solely on themselves. In the end, only the final team scores are recognized, except for putting someone's life at risk. All other methods are accepted in all cities. As warriors, they will face even greater challenges in the future, and soon the threats won't be so simple to make. Tang intervened in the fight only because the sun was setting, and they needed to return to the city immediately. As for the veteran team, the leader feels deeply ashamed of the humiliation suffered from a mere novice squad. The red-haired leader walks towards the protagonist and asks if he has the courage to say his true name, being answered with his true identity. He observes the protagonist for a few seconds and bursts into laughter because Aang shares the name with the strongest warrior of all time. Then he ends by saying he won't let the protagonist's team earn points so easily, and that they will definitely become the cleaning crew. He turns his back and leaves, saying he will get revenge later. He picks up his mask, which had fallen to the ground since the beginning of the fight, puts it on his face, and calls the Black Weapon Group, ordering them to leave the area. Tang warns the novices that the Black Weapon Group is known for quickly executing missions and that they will try to disrupt their tasks. He also mentions that the leader of that group is very skilled with firearms. In the previous fight, he didn't use any, but it's worth noting that strong warriors still exist, and somehow it could end badly for Liu's team. He then finishes by saying they should return to the city immediately. The leader decides to stop thinking about it for a while and calls everyone to leave. She then asks Aang why he is staring into space trying to look cool, and congratulates him on his cool move. Aang is thoughtful after that. Snow then invites him for dinner at his house, but he declines the invitation, saying he has a plan that was quite mysterious until then, and it would be put into action that night. He will capture the 3 live demons alone without anyone's help. A loud security warning is issued. It says not to leave the city for obvious reasons of imminent risk. Up until that moment, only the warning was heard and no one was around because they were probably at home at that time of night. Aang thought security there would be much stricter. All there was a sign saying not to approach the temporary emergency gate. It seems they were understaffed and thought no one would leave the city at night, but that was very strange and much different from years ago. Finding demons at night was not difficult, and it would be quite easy to capture 3 finless demonic beings using the methods from his past life. The veteran leader had barely decided to hinder his team's progress, so he would be very unpredictable in completing the mission at a totally unexpected moment. Someone then appears, saying she was right. Liu was there, very excited and emotional because she was going on a night mission. She would have much more freedom as a warrior and had only given a flimsy excuse to leave the dojo because she already knew Aang would do something during the night. The protagonist was startled by her and is questioned with great enthusiasm if he would leave the city at that moment. He tries to lie, but in this aspect of his past life, he remains quite clumsy. Liu says his acting was terribly awful, so he reveals all his plans that he would put into practice at that hour. Unfortunately, he had been discovered and asks her not to tell the chief because he would go back right away. Then Saigu Liu says she is in on the whole plan. She quickly asks for details of the plan while Aang celebrates all this in his mind. Suddenly, an evil laugh is heard, but it wasn't from either of them. They look up at the high top of the enormous wall in the area. Up there, soldiers are yawning from fatigue. Standing guard, there would be torture because no one would be foolish enough to go out in the middle of the night. They were very sleepy, and one of them just wanted to close the gate. But he's reprimanded because the squad leaders shouldn't hear such a bad and foolish idea since a gap should remain open in case of an emergency. Years ago, some refugees ran to the gate begging for help, but the opening took a long time. So they died in the most horrible way possible at the hands of demons. Since that day, almost all cities leave an emergency gap in their main gates. In that world, nothing is more important than human life. The soldier apologizes and is told he will quickly get used to all that. His friend had brought a very sexy comic book. It was a photo book of female warriors from other cities and had cost a lot of money. It was the newest edition of all. While the soldiers are entertained, Saigu Liu and Aang quickly run out of the city. They then see the old training field, which at night is filled with fog. The protagonist calls his friend to head in the opposite direction. They are already far from the gate to avoid being discovered, and the ruined forest there helps them camouflage. The plan is to attract the monsters close, aim for their heads, and knock them out with brute force. Aang then moves away, telling Liu to wait for him. Confidently, he soon disappears into the nighttime fog alone. Saigu Liu asks him to wait because she is also alone in the forest at night, and it seems like the fog and darkness will swallow her whole. She is both very scared and excited but must focus and prepare to attack the demons when Aang returns. The protagonist's ability to attract monsters impresses her because he singles out one demon at a time, reducing the difficulty of capturing them. Aang catches the attention of the demonic beings. Liu had never heard of capturing demons by brute force. She gradually gets used to it and her skills improve. The protagonist calls his teammate. She appears very quickly, ready for action. The two prepare to strike the monster. Together, they achieve great success in their task. Under Aang's direction, they agilely hit the demon's head multiple times as if it were a game. This causes the creatures to become dizzy. The capture method used half a century ago is put into practice once more that night. Despite the process running smoothly, the technique still requires a lot of strength and stamina. Aang then thinks he needs to train his body more because in his past life, this activity was like child's play. Finally, the third demon is captured. Saigu Liu was already very tired and exhausted. The protagonist orders that they leave the creatures right there. She is very confused by this information. Finless demons are not intelligent enough to save themselves, so there would be no problem leaving them there because they wouldn't go far. Besides, they wouldn't wake up anytime soon after so many blows to the head. By tomorrow morning, the mission will be fully completed. Saigu Liu asks how he knows all this. He sounds cold and thinks he has said too much. Suddenly, a voice saying they found someone is heard. They look around very worried and tense. Out of nowhere, 2 monsters identical to the ones Aang had tried to capture earlier appear. They say he really smells demonic. Saigu Liu confirms that these monsters are 2 one-fin creatures. Aang is desperate at this appearance because the 2 of them alone couldn't defeat them. Many lights turn on at the top of the fortress. Quickly, the team leaders appear. The blue-haired one says that signs of one-fin demons have been tracked and that the area should be scanned with spotlights. The red-haired girl asks why the sudden appearance, and if it is the same demon as before, being answered in the negative by Yao. The two demonic beings are among the dead trees of the forest. This information is quickly relayed to the squad leaders. The pink-eyed boy thinks something might have attracted them and quickly orders that no one panic because the city's gates will close and no one will be injured. Then the defense towers are quickly prepared, but a scream rebukes the happening. Someone was outside. Tang then recognizes that it's the brats. Aang and Liu were outside the city. The blue-eyed chief wonders why they are outside the city. The three observe everything closely, and then Tang realizes the three finless demons have been captured. He quickly understands what's happening because they likely wanted to finish the mission they were prevented from completing during the day. The pink-eyed one says they use their talents recklessly, trying to make a good impression. That's a typical novice problem. Yao then says they will receive severe punishment when they return. He heads toward his warriors in distress. Joel will be in charge of commanding everything while Tang and the blue-eyed girl stay outside. The two leave quickly. A rare night of drinks have been easily ruined. The demons are worried because the chiefs knew they were there. Aang tries to protect Liu because they must wait for help and buy time. It becomes clear that the protagonist is the target of the demonic beings because they are acting the same way as before. Maybe it's because of his rebirth or what happened in the cave. Liu doesn't want to be protected and says she will fight alongside Aang. The monster asks if they still want to fight back. The demon duo jumps down from the top of a tree, landing on the ground ready to attack. The pair of friends watch in shock and fear. The demon leader orders them to kill Liu first. When the monster tries to strike his companion, Aang punches it. The energy was so much that they were thrown far away. The monster says Aang has good reflexes. Liu then tells the creature to get lost, kicking it, but a lot of water splashes on her face afterward. She thinks she didn't land the blow. The monster then traps her with its powers. Bound tightly, she screams in pain. Aang calls her name, very worried. The demonic duo says he is distracted, which is not good. Suddenly, he gets a strong punch to the face. Yo arrives, telling the horrid creature not to hurt his children. He tells them not to worry because they are safe now. The chief points out that there is a water-type demon with a blue core and an earth-type demon with a red amulet needing to save Liu immediately. The blue stone is agility, while the red one signifies strength. The monster celebrates blocking the blow because his head almost exploded. Joel wonders why they are standing so close. He orders the defense cannons to be prepared very carefully. Suddenly, an exhausted soldier arrives, warning of the presence of several enemies nearby. A demon wave is approaching. Huge noises are heard around the area. Soon, several creatures are seen running, all with very sharp and frightening teeth. Joel observes everything very perplexed. He sweats cold with fear at that moment. He orders the alarms to be sounded and all soldiers to prepare immediately. The city goes into full alert. The warriors are informed about the demon wave. All the groups gather at the wall. The chiefs and Aang then realize that horde of demons and are very worried about ending it quickly. Liu says she is fine and asks them to save the city. She also thinks about her recklessness for abandoning her real duties. The monster orders her to shut up. Yao says they will all return together and safely. The demon prepares for the incoming attacks. Everyone will attack together. Tang urges Gel to be very careful. She flies at an inhuman height, breaking an obstacle with a kick. Aang wonders why the enemy didn't attack him. He slips past his opponent unnoticed, managing to reach his back. Yao is confused about the situation. The demonic being says his companion will die if he doesn't pay attention. He calls him quickly to his side. Liu is stunned in motion as the demon ram with her stuck to him. Aang thinks it's a trap because he was separated from his leaders, so he decides to stay calm and not act foolishly. Yao orders him not to move forward because he cannot defeat that demon alone. Then Aang thinks that Liu might be able to. He also ponders her gaze, as it was very familiar and known. Aang should follow her after this, and he cannot abandon her. A little distance from the battlefield, the demon with a water fin was analyzing the human he had captured. He tells Liu that fin demons are very interested in the rich emotions of humans, and he had heard that humans scream when desperate. So, in a terrifying way, the demon asks Liu to beg for her life. The girl whispers something, but since her mouth is covered with water, she can't say anything. The demon then immediately realizes what was happening and quickly removes the gag from his victim's mouth. Right after that, he continues to urge the girl to scream for her life. However, with an extremely arrogant aura, the only thing Liu responds is that the man wasn't worthy of that. The demon, not used to such emotions from humans, becomes confused and thoughtful about it. Setu then continues speaking and states that she was raised in a martial family and would never bow her head to an enemy, as cowardice was a shame for them. The creature, seeing that he was being challenged, becomes furious and then kicks the face of that extremely arrogant girl. He tells Liu that she was just bait and that she would die soon. The girl becomes desperate, but before the monster could do anything to her, something appears behind him. Our protagonist, wielding a dagger, orders the monster to leave his friend alone as he was the real target. The white-haired girl, seeing her friend in that place, wonders why that idiot had come there alone. The demon, on the other hand, is pleased because his target came and claims that the trap had worked as planned, and upon hearing this, Liu questions why Aang was the target. Even so, at that moment, Aang only asks if the girl was okay. She quickly yells that she was fine and asks why the boy was there alone as he couldn't win a fight against a fin demon. Once again, the water creature goes to Liu and kicks the girl, commenting that she was too noisy. Aang, irritated, orders the monster not to hurt his friend and states that he was the target, so he should take her place. The monster, before he could respond, charges at his enemy to attack him. However, he stops in front of our protagonist and says the boy should die. Despite his slow reaction time, Aang retaliates against the creature. Even so, the monster manages to dodge and immediately lands a punch to Aang's ribs. The boy, who barely managed to defend himself, thinks that his body cannot react to such fast attacks at all. The water demon, while using his abilities, says that Aang's body has a sense similar to that of other demons, which is why he was curious. While defending himself from that strange ability, the boy wonders what it was and thinks that over the past few decades, demons had evolved and gained more attributes. Meanwhile, Liu, analyzing the battle, thinks that the boy's body was too weak and he couldn't use any abilities besides physical techniques. And if the fight continued at that pace, she feared that Aang would die, and thus both of them would end their lives there. Once again, the anxious girl wonders why that idiot came there alone, as he was no match for a Finn demon. Determined, the girl says to herself that she couldn't just stand by watching her friend face such a monster. At that moment, while the two opponents exchange blows, the Finn demon manages to use his water power and capture one of Aang's arms. But on the other hand, the boy sees an opportunity in this opening to attack and tries to strike the demon with his knife. However, the demon also blocks this attack and states that the boy had killed another demon in the cave, so it didn't make sense for Aang to be so weak. The young man only responds that he didn't know what his enemy was talking about and then states that he hadn't done any of that. Confused, the monster comments that such behavior was bad, and for that reason, the young man should be punished. He starts to use his strength to try to break Aang's bones, who was defenseless. After a session of beatings, the demon prepares to finish off his victim, while stating that the boy was dishonest. After that, he lands a punch to the boy's stomach, throwing him far away, and then says that he must die. After flying for kilometers and destroying several trees, Aang lies on the ground, and at that moment, the demon asks once again for him to reveal his secret. On the ground, completely beaten, the boy thinks that it hurt a lot and questions whether his bones have been broken by that kick. While cutting the ropes that were holding him, Liu thinks that he will have to hurry immediately. The demon starts approaching Aang while saying that he would die and then he would devour the boy. While licking his teeth, the demon comments that Aang could help him evolve. The monster crouches down and reaches out to the boy, saying he will take him away. However, at that moment, Liu manages to free himself and immediately attempts to attack his enemy. After missing the first attack with the dagger, the girl then lands a full-force kick with both feet on the demon's chest. She uses that to launch herself into the air and land another kick on the demon's chin. Seju stands in front of our protagonist to defend him, and the girl remarks that their enemy shouldn't touch her teammate. Seeing this, the monster thinks that he didn't expect that girl to escape his attack. Seeing his heroine right in front of him, Aang says that person was very strong. Irritated, Liu tells the monster that if he wants to kill a member of their group, he will have to kill the captain first. And the monster promptly agrees and launches an attack with several water needles. As if a rain of blades were coming her way, the girl prepares to do something. But she realizes it is already too close to her and wonders what she should do. With agility, she begins to deflect all the needles while simultaneously protecting our protagonist. Aang tries to ask the young woman to stop defending him and dodge. However, the girl replies that if she dodges, the boy will get hit, so he shouldn't say anything more. At that moment, the demon sets a trap and warns the girl to be careful beneath her. Then the water needles on the ground begin to take shape. They promptly hit Liu from behind, putting the girl in a difficult situation. The demon uses this to bring the young woman close to him, and after achieving this, he grabs the girl by the neck. Right after that, the monster, irritated, exudes even more death and says that before anything else, he will humiliate the girl. With a terrifying smile, the beast also tells the human in front of him that soon she will be screaming and begging for help. Our protagonist was almost unconscious and only sees that monster in front of him holding his companion by the neck. He tries to ask the monster to let go of his friend, but the words don't come out of his mouth. The boy thinks it's a shame, as he was reborn only to watch his companion die in front of him, and he wasn't the strongest warrior, but someone who depended on others. His core begins to crack, and as it does, the boy also thinks that he couldn't even protect himself, let alone someone else. Aang starts trying to get up while a red energy begins to emanate from his body, as if he were unleashing a new aura. With that, the boy tells himself that at least he wanted to spare himself the agony of watching another companion die before him. The water demon starts feeling a strong energy emanating from that boy, making him apprehensive and at the same time confused by the situation. He immediately turns around to see what's happening. A blast of red and black energy suddenly passes by him, leaving the creature startled. Aang, after passing by the demon, manages to recover his teammate and save her. The blue creature notices that, in addition, some wounds have appeared on his hand, probably caused by the pressure of the wind emanating from that boy. On the other hand, Aang, with Liu in his arms, comments that she did great in her first time as a leader. The girl, stunned, questions if that was really her friend Aang. However, with a strange expression, the boy only asks her to leave the rest to him. With dark energy surrounding his body, the young man gently lays Liu on the ground so she can rest. The blue demon remarks that he was right, and Aang also has the same smell as them. Immediately afterward, our protagonist turns to face his enemy, commenting that he also doesn't know exactly what happened. He thinks that the power seems to be coming from his chest and shooting upwards. Moreover, this strong energy even seemed like it would pierce through his body. Then suddenly, red energy begins to emanate, making Aang groan in pain. His core starts taking a different shape, and a symbol appears right on his chest. The blue creature realizes that core was the same as the one belonging to the king of the Finns, and that was extremely bizarre. Fainted, Liu can only watch as her friend Aang takes on a completely bizarre new form. The boy remarks that he doesn't know what's happening, but he knows the demon is going to die, and then activates his Finn form, which causes a horn to grow on him. Elsewhere, the battle between the two leaders of the third squad and the Earth Demon was raging. The monster, while attacking one of the two leaders, notices something strange. He looks to the side and thinks that something is happening, and an energy is making his head spin. Tang Tang orders the monster not to get distracted and immediately charges at it to punch him. He manages to land a solid punch on the core of his enemy, causing a loud echo. Even though it was an extremely powerful punch, apparently the demon manages to stay standing. However, Dada was not in the mood to leave him alone, and after Yotang hits the demon, the woman appears next to her teammate. Without hesitation, she delivers a solid kick to the Earth Demon's head. This blow indeed blade sends the creature flying, crashing it into a nearby tree. In order to show no mercy to her enemy, the woman immediately advances to finish the battle. The monster, now completely wounded, thinks that he couldn't defend himself and that these creatures were too strong. Dada and Yao Tang didn't want their enemy to think much, and the two quickly charged at him again. In perfect sync, they managed to strike the creature with a punch and a kick, causing the beast's core to start emerging. The squad leaders also emit an energy that begins to pierce the chest of that creature. This immense power sends the monster flying into the air. We then see that a hole had appeared in the monster's stomach, and it gets angry about that. It starts doing something, and its core changes color. Seeing this, Zhao realizes that the creature is trying to self-destruct and warns Tang Tang that they need to act quickly. Furious, the monster had already made up its mind and begins preparing to end those creatures. Yet suddenly, a golden energy strikes the beast, throwing it far away. This power pierces the monster and slams it into the ground. We then see that when it struck, it was a metal spear. Confused, Dada and Yao Tang look in the direction of that weapon to find out what had happened. Looking toward the wall where a battle was taking place, the two realize it was from the defensive artillery. While defending the gate, Joel was fiercely fighting all the creatures he saw in front of him. The boy, being strong, was managing well even in front of several creatures without fins. Still, he thinks there are too many monsters there and says there's no way to kill them all. Frustrated, he orders his companions to return to the city as the wave of demons was approaching. Hearing his friend's request, Dada tells Tang Tang that they need to go back because the city's citizens needed them. Even so, the blonde reminds her that his student was in danger, fighting a very powerful finned demon. However, Jel brings him back to reality, stating that she feels just as bad as he does. Yet they were not just squad leaders but warriors with responsibilities. The man, even irritated, realizes this is the best course, and soon after, he and his companion head toward the wave of monsters attacking the wall. Back to our protagonist's fight, the water demon was wondering why the boy was like that. He questions whether the boy was even human, as he was very similar to the Finn demons. Confused, he continues wondering why a Finn had grown on such an inferior creature like our protagonist. Our protagonist, on the other hand, remains silent with his strange new appearance. He thinks that maybe this is his reason for reincarnation, and that this was why he received this demonic power to shape everything. Suddenly, an energy orb that was on his fingers throws him in another direction. The orb has a green color and starts heading toward Liu, who was unconscious behind them. A healing field establishes itself near the girl and begins to regenerate her wounds. The blue creature grows even more confused, wondering if the boy in front of him was of the wood type. Ignoring that monster, our protagonist thinks he can vaguely remember what happened, and maybe it's because he absorbed that demon. He also thinks that if he absorbed the monster in front of him, he could also obtain the power of water, and then several tree roots begin to surround him. The water demon is completely confused, questioning what kind of power that is, and then comments that he had never seen anything like it before. Imposingly, Aang levitates with a throne made from his new power. In a completely snobbish manner, the young man says that he is excited to see the extent of his demonic power. The creature, realizing that our protagonist had absorbed a wood-type ability and also acquired a fin core, begins to tremble. Seeing that monster right in front of him, the boy says it's interesting because in his entire life, he had never seen a demon show so much fear before. The young man quickly uses his wood power to move right in front of the demon. He gets close enough and asks the monster to attack him with everything it's got. Finally, Aang says he wants to see how strong he is in this form, and the monster, worried, asks who this human is. Immediately after, he uses his water form to hurl droplets in Aang's direction, but Aang quickly defends himself with his gravel shield. The boy, after gaining some distance from his enemy, thinks it's interesting to manipulate elements. Aang remembers that the wood-type demon he absorbed had a very interesting ability, and this was the perfect time to test it. Right after, he begins to copy a technique he saw from the last demon he fought. Roots start to emerge from the ground toward the water demon. They begin to surround the creature, and after binding it, they twist its body. Our protagonist, while making all these moves, thinks that it didn't seem difficult at all and was actually quite interesting. The monster realizes that it's being strangled and soon starts moaning in pain. Aang, enjoying this, just asks the monster to keep fighting for its life. The water monster thinks he must use his trump card to survive, so suddenly, a drop of water starts to emerge from his chest. Water blasts, which the demon calls disintegration, head toward Aang to put an end to him. However, with his new abilities, the boy manages to react and dodge that attack in time. The creature, seeing that it wasn't enough, immediately charges at his opponent in an attempt to end his life. The monster tries to use his claws to dig into Aang's body, while saying that he could not kill him. The creature manages to use his claws to cut our protagonist's arm, while saying that he was wood-type and couldn't hurt a water-type like him. After this, the creature launches several attacks, and during the strikes, he says that this power is not something the boy could comprehend. And finally, he kicks Aang in the chest, launching him far away. The boy is thrown against a tree, destroying it and suffering a heavy impact. However, even while flipping through the air, the boy has a smile on his face. He uses the surrounding trees to create a wooden hand that stops him mid-air, preventing him from being thrown further. With that red aura around him, Aang confirms the water demon's theory that he was right, as he didn't truly know how strong demonic power was. However, with arrogance in his eyes, he comments that he was the most powerful warrior and extremely good at learning things. Recreating his arm with his attribute, the boy says that all he needed to do to kill that demon was to constantly familiarize himself with demonic power. Aang's enemy is extremely impressed that the boy was able to use wood-type self-regeneration in an instant. Seeing this, our protagonist simply responds that he had already said he was good at learning new things. Without hesitation, he charges at his opponent using his new physical strength. Quickly, the boy starts closing in on the water demon, who just stares in silence. He also uses his ability to leap through the air and does so several times, gaining momentum and accelerating the speed at which he was running. In the blink of an eye, Aang is already face to face with the water demon, who is impressed by it. Before the creature could gain distance, it realizes it has been trapped by roots from the ground. At that moment, our protagonist manages to touch the face of the Finn demon with both hands. With a demonic expression, he says that he won't let his enemy escape under any circumstances. The boy starts to levitate using his ability, while the water demon demon kneels. Our protagonist states that he was getting bored with the fight while starting to do something to his enemy. The demon's innards begin to turn green and something starts to emit from his body. After a flash, an explosion happens, causing that poor demon to disintegrate in the blink of an eye. The only one left standing is Aang, who is still completely fine. The core of the demon that had just been killed flies to the back of the young man with black and white hair. Something begins to reintegrate the body of that creature, and after reforming again, the demon claims he can disintegrate his body and rebuild it at any time. However, before he can attack Aang, the creature is struck multiple times with wooden spikes. The young man simply replies that he knew that, but the core, which is vital to demons, cannot regenerate just like that. He also comments that it was foolish, and that the demon had simply overestimated himself. In his final moments, the creature sees its core being sucked away from its body by the roots made by the boy. Nearly dead, the monster tries to stop it, but Aang squeezes his core. He declares that once a demon's core is destroyed, even a 7-finned demon will die. With a malevolent expression, the boy comments that he is going to take the water-type powers of his enemy. The body of that creature begins to dissolve into liquid and spread across the ground. Amidst a blood-red moonlight, our protagonist stares at that object. Shortly after, he destroys it and begins drinking what was coming out of it as he wishes to make himself stronger. After drinking all of it, the boy wipes the corner of his mouth while saying it didn't taste bad. The young man then looks in Liu's direction, who is being healed by the energy he himself had produced. For some reason, Aang starts using his water power, which moves toward the girl. In a blink of an eye, he materializes right in front of Liu, merely staring at her for a moment. As if he had another personality, the boy begins to say that demons devour and humans kill. He repeats this once more and for some reason prepares to attack his companion. The young man undoes the protection around her, almost hitting her. However, before he could fully strike Liu, his hand stops. Aang's true personality starts preventing that evil force from doing it. Our protagonist begins to tell himself that he couldn't kill an ally, as all he ever wanted was for that girl to be safe. And right after that, he orders that damned voice to get out of his head. Within Aang's consciousness, the 8-finned demon was saying he couldn't believe that boy was able to resist his will. And after analyzing it further, he states that it was truly interesting. We then return to the battle in front of the city wall. Even Suju and Snow were helping in the fight to prevent the monsters from climbing the wall. The boy, with his stone ability, strikes the ground, causing a pulse that throws several of those finless monsters away. Irritated, he questions where his friends Aang and Liu were, as their team was the only one that hadn't reunited yet. Suju, while cutting one of those monsters, replies that she heard from the other teams that 2 warriors had escaped the city and were targeted by 2 one-finned demons. She also says that those other warriors were probably Aang and Liu, which is why she was worried. Upon hearing that her brother and her comrade had escaped the city, Snow is shocked. The girl simply asks Snow to stop asking questions and then states that the situation was extremely dire. While defending herself from the beast's attacks, Snow gets annoyed by the sudden appearance of those 2 finless demons. Immediately after, she charges at one of the demons and comments that they should just focus on enduring that demonic wave for now. Dada and Yao Tang had just arrived on the scene. The two, without hesitation, promptly head towards the wave of monsters in front of them. Joel was also in the middle of the battle, asking his friends how their cores were holding up. Tang Tang, on the other hand, was too busy fighting the beastly creatures in front of him. After leaping into the air, the man lands on the ground, punching one of the monsters and hitting multiple surrounding creatures with an energy pulse. He finally responds that his core wasn't too exhausted, and Dada's must be at the same level. Gel, who is fighting, thinks that a warrior's core will eventually wear out, as the greater the power, the more energy it consumes. Fortunately, she and Tang Tang were working together to fight those demons, and after thinking this, the girl lands a kick on one of the creatures, sending it flying into others. After that attack, the girl asks her friend Joel what they should do next. The man responds that the 2 of them killed that finned demon, and the attacks from the finned demons have decreased significantly. Moreover, with the finned demon gone, these demons are like soldiers without a commander and are only attacking aimlessly. And although finned demons don't have minds of their own, they understand the concept of the fear of death, so the plan is to make those creatures afraid. With a wicked expression, the boy declares that they should use this opportunity to weaken the enemy's will to attack and buy time for the soldiers. Yao Tang and Dada's cores begin to glow and both agree with Joel. In perfect sync, they use their physical abilities to jump and fly into the air. Up there, they prepare for an attack, stating they will make those bastards explode until there's nothing left, and then they charge at the creatures. The monsters only see that burst of energy coming down on them from above. After hitting the ground, many monsters are thrown in various directions and others are quickly disintegrated. A massive hole is made in the ground, leaving all those creatures in shock. Dada tells her friends that, including the attack from that finned demon, this was the second time they had used their cores in battle. Tang Tang replies that if their cores and bodies didn't have limitations, he would be able to use this form to keep killing demons. The 2 then, in sync, quickly charge at the remaining creatures to put an end to it all. Joel, while watching, comments that the power of the red cores is truly the most explosive. However, his was also, so he uses his blue ability to charge toward his countless enemies. The boy quickly cuts through several of those beasts, leaving them all in pieces. Seeing this, Suju remarks that they were incredible, and this was the first time she had seen the squad leaders in action, and they were very strong. Snow, on the other hand, says that the strength of a warrior with a fin core was incredible, and it made her extremely envious. After that attack, Joel asks if his friends are okay, and both quickly agree, with Dada stating that she was enjoying killing those demons. The wave of enemies begins to retreat slightly after taking so much damage. Joel celebrates, as those bastards were truly feeling fear and the plan was working. It was time to lift the spirits of the other groups. The commander then asked the warriors to replenish their strength and continue fighting, as the demonic wave was being forced to retreat. Everyone on the wall begins to celebrate, as the squad leaders were indeed very strong. Finally, Joel sighs, thinking that they could finally rest. However, something makes his pupils dilate. The boy realizes that amidst the horde of demons, something was coming, and they assume it was the last Finn demon. However, through the smoke, a familiar silhouette can be seen. The 3 leaders then realize it was someone they knew very well. We see that in the midst of the mist, Aang appeared carrying the body of his friend. All the creatures that were previously attacking the wall become motionless in the presence of that being. Dada is impressed by Aang's presence and wonders where the fin demon that was attacking the boy and Liu went. Joel, nervous, remarks that even though they made the finless demons retreat, Aang couldn't just come there or he'd be devoured. The lower-level monsters, with no consciousness, charge our protagonist. Seeing this, Yao Tang tries to stop them, commanding the monsters to stop immediately. For some reason, Aang remains in the same place, not moving a muscle. He simply looks in the direction of those mindless beasts and orders them to leave immediately. All the creatures, sensing the energy of that being, retreat without a second thought. The demons that were once furious bow, trembling in fear. One of them quickly runs away without hesitation. The monsters, seeing this, follow suit, and the entire horde that was attacking that place starts running past Aang. In the midst of that confusion, our protagonist stands tall, as if unaffected by anything happening. Yao Tang is extremely confused by this and halts his advance. Confused, he asks his colleagues why the demonic wave had suddenly retreated. One of the people on the wall defending it finally realizes what was happening. Everyone on top of the wall also noticed that the demonic wave had retreated and started celebrating for having managed to protect the area. However, one of the young men asks his friend why those monsters suddenly retreated and wonders if the attack from the 3 squad leaders scared them. Even so, the celebration continues and everyone on the wall begins praising the squad leaders for what they had done. Looking at his colleagues, Ji wonders if those monsters really retreated because of them. The other option Yao Tang suggests is that those creatures ran away because of Aang. The boy, who had remained imposing until that moment, kneels, collapsing to the ground. He soon faints and Yao notices this, running towards his student to try to help. Our protagonist, while almost fainting, sees the 3 squad leaders running in his direction. In the vastness of his mind, the 8-fin demon states that the boy really enjoyed using that power. Confused, Aang asks who that being was that was talking to him. The demon replies that they had met once half a century ago and then mentions that Aang should be able to remember. At that moment, our protagonist realizes that it was one of the 2 8-fin demons he saw and then asks how many of those demons exist. However, the creature only replies that he shouldn't worry about that, as the boy would find out how many exist in the future. Aang awakens in his mind and realizes that in front of him was that being he saw back then. The being states that he will reveal his name and mentions that he is the king of the Finns, Commersum, the strongest 8-fin demon. The boy can only stare at that powerful man in front of him, unable to say anything. The creature thinks that the fact this human wasn't even scared and his presence was incredible, and this explained why he had rejected his will earlier. He then tells Aang that the boy doesn't need to worry since he won't harm him for now, but irritated, Aang stands up and questions why he was chosen. The 8-fin demon only responds that the boy was asking too many questions. In the blink of an eye, another version of him appears, placing his hand on Aang's face. The king states that Aang will eventually learn about his plan, so he shouldn't be in a hurry. And as for his body, now the 2 shared the same body. He also says that for various reasons, he would need to hibernate for a long time, and to keep them safe. Aang would have to strive to evolve in the future. With arrogance, the demon finally says that if Aang did that, he would become closer to the nearly perfect being that the King of the Crimsons was. As he gets up, the boy remarks that this demon greatly underestimates humans. He prepares to attack the monster, but soon wakes up to someone calling his name. We then see that in reality, Aang was holding Liu by the collar and almost hitting the girl with a punch. For some reason, the boy was looking at certain parts of the girl that shouldn't be revealed. Confused, the young man questions what he was doing, but before he could think about it, he is struck by the girl. Several of Liu's subordinates begin to rough up our protagonist while the girl becomes completely embarrassed. For some reason, someone calls the girl clueless, and when she looks to the side, she realizes who it was. We then see someone dressed in martial artist clothing standing there, asking if that was how the girl treated someone who saved her life. Everyone who had been hitting Aang bows before that man, and Liu calls that boy her father. Our protagonist is completely confused, not understanding the situation he is in. He sees the figure of that man right in front of him, someone imposing and quite strong. Joel, who was behind him, introduces that man as the leader of the famous martial arts sect in Helios City, the head of the Sidhu family, Sidhu Exongan. Seeing this, Aang recognizes that he was his colleague's father, and that the man had taken care of him while he was in a coma. The young man promptly stands up and bows, greeting the sect leader and thanking him for taking care of him. Sun Gon promptly responds that there was no problem and opens his arms. He then mentions that Aang saved his daughter's life, and for that, the Sidhu family was extremely grateful for his bravery. Sun also says that all the warriors could rest at the Sidhu family's dojo, as they would celebrate the retreat of the demonic wave later. Gon states that he had watched the 3 leaders since they were young, so they shouldn't be too formal and could also treat the family dojo as their own home. They should also take care of his daughter, since even though she had a difficult personality, she was a good person and shouldn't be treated in a special way. Yao Tang simply responds that the boy shouldn't worry and assures that they would do their best. Suddenly, the blonde man says that before going to the celebration, he needed everyone to leave the room except Aang because he wanted to have a conversation with the young man. Our protagonist is confused by this sudden action, but after that, everyone leaves, leaving only the 3 squad leaders and Aang. The blonde man tells his student that the 1-fin demon in the warrior exam and the demonic wave were strange situations, and for that reason, he wanted to know what Aang knew. Joel, irritated, responds to his friend Yao Tang that even though Aang was a member of his own team, he couldn't hesitate with him, so he was going to do something in his place. Then he tells Aang that he will ask him a question, and with a terrifying expression, he asks if the boy was a demon. Our protagonist is shocked into silence for a moment by such a sudden and shocking question. The 3 squad leaders and the boy stare at each other in an awkward silence. Embarrassed, Aang laughs it off and says that Liu and he barely escaped the clutches of that 1-fin demon, and that there was no way he could be a demon. Joel, on the other hand, responds that the other 1-fin demon was killed by Tang Tang and Gel. Because of that, he asks if Aang had killed the other one-fin demon by himself. He approaches the boy and asks how he escaped with Liu, but the boy feels pressured, as he was practically out of options there. Joel, completely insane, questions whether the boy had escaped the clutches of a one-fin demon because he was their accomplice. Hearing this, Aang wonders if he would have to reveal his secret there, but he says that if he revealed it, something bad might happen. The boy, nervous, also thinks that they would probably kill him now without even letting him finish explaining. Aang also tells himself that those people wouldn't let this opportunity pass, and they wouldn't believe him, only treating him as a demon. And all of this was because his body harbored the power of the most powerful demon of all. Joel starts to summon a dagger while saying that if the boy remained quiet, he would have to resort to violence. After hearing that, the young man questions himself about what he should do and considers the possibility of fighting those people. However, Dada arrives and grabs her comrade's hand, telling him to stop. She states that only demons with 4 fins or more can truly transform into humans, and that even if Aang were one, it wouldn't make sense for him to be in that city. Tang Tang responds that besides that, demons don't save their companions, and they don't understand the concept of camaraderie as they are selfish and inhuman. However, Aang risked his life to bring Liu back, and for that reason, he didn't believe the boy was a demon. Joel gives the boy a few pats on the back and agrees, saying that he knew that but just wanted to provoke the boy a little. With a smile, the man comments that Aang and Liu cheated death and that it must have been tough. Yotang comments that despite that, Liu had told them that she fainted while fighting the one-fin demon and didn't remember anything. In other words, if Aang had saved the girl from the beast's clutches, they wanted to know exactly what happened. Dada asks if the young man really defeated that one-fin demon by himself. With that, the boy gains a glimmer of hope as he had been focusing on the demon inside him all this time and forgot there were other possibilities. Then finally, he opens his mouth and smugly responds that it happened because he is a genius. The boy says he can instantly absorb most of the energy in a core and use it, allowing him to wield a much greater power than usual. Confused, Dada comments that, according to what he claimed, Aang's secret ability was similar to what they do when they activate the energies of their cores. After hearing that, the boy promptly responds yes, and in his head wonders if they would believe that explanation. The three remain silent for a moment, just looking at each other. Joel lets out small laughs and states that if that was the case, the boy really was a genius. Tang Tang asks if he had done that during the previous incident and this time to defeat that one-finned demon. The boy replies that yes, because that incident was when he discovered this power and felt his body absorb all the energy from the core and used it in an explosive attack. With this explanation, Yao Tang thinks that if the boy's words are true, it would explain why he found the core in his chest shattered several times. The boy also wonders if that really was what happened and if all of this could be summed up by Aang being a genius. Dada opens her mouth and comments that if what he's saying is true, his ability is beyond his control at the moment, as he doesn't have the proper training to handle it. Yao Tang walks toward his student and says that his friend was right, and for that reason, he wanted to put the boy's power to the test and observe it himself. The boy, exuding the energy from his core, points in a direction and tells Aang that they should go to the arena to test it. Under the moonlight, our protagonist and his teacher face each other for a battle. After finishing putting on his uniform, the boy couldn't believe that man was still doubting him and had even asked for a test. Squatting like an animal, Tang Tang asks Aang to come at him immediately. The boy, embarrassed, states that he'll be under his captain's care. He thinks that in his current state, there's no way he could go against that man, as his current body couldn't use the most basic fundamentals of his past life. While touching his core, the boy asks himself what he should do. But before he could think about it, Tang Tang tells him to get ready and then charges at the boy. After an enormous explosion toward his opponent, the man tries to attack him, but by a hair's breadth, Aang manages to dodge. Seeing that his enemy avoided his attack, the man plants his foot on the ground and immediately tries another kick, which again, our protagonist manages to dodge. The boy feels a strong gust of wind from that strike, causing his hair and some small stones to fly. He looks back and sees that the energy blast created a crater in the arena and thinks that his teacher was really taking this seriously. Dada yells for her friend Tang Tang not to overdo it, but ignoring her, Yao Tang states that aside from everything else, the boy's reaction time was very good. Upon hearing this, the young man thinks to himself that this was thanks to his battle experience from his past life, but that this was his limit. Not wanting to waste time with idle chatter, Tang Tang replies that he's going to take things seriously and prepares to punch the boy. The man strikes the ground, creating a huge hole and emitting a loud bang throughout the area. This also kicks up a huge cloud of smoke that covers the entire battle arena. After dodging that while putting distance between them, our protagonist thinks that the man was completely destroying the arena and that his teacher was really going overboard. Suddenly, like a lion chasing a gazelle, the blonde appears behind Aang, ready to grab him. With one of his hands, he grabs the boy by the neck, immobilizing him and leaving the young man breathless. The man asks if that was all Aang had, and in this situation, the boy thinks that his body couldn't escape from his grasp anymore. Without any mercy, the man kicks his student, sending him flying and crashing into the wall. Seeing this, Joel and Dada worry about what happened to Aang. The man comments that this is too much and they should stop this, but Dada refuses, saying that Tang Tang isn't someone who would take things too far, so they should wait. The blonde, standing imposingly, asks if that's all Aang had and says that he couldn't call himself a genius with just that. Trying to get up, the boy tells himself that he really hated being underestimated. He rises and thinks that in his past life, warriors referred to him as king, so Tang was still a child in his eyes. The boy also says that if he called himself a genius, then he would fail this test if he couldn't prove it, and since he was reborn, he hadn't been able to live up to his past. That's why he would secretly use a bit of that cursed demon's power in his body, and Tang wouldn't mind this 16-year-old being rebellious. A dark red energy begins to envelop the boy's entire body. Seeing this, Data realizes that Aang's aura was much more powerful and strange. As he walks toward the teacher, the boy says his name. Imposingly, he comments that it was his turn to attack, recalling the moments from his previous life. Upon seeing this, Tang feels an overwhelming pressure, as if he were witnessing firsthand the former strongest in the world, Aang. As he releases that aura, the boy thinks that after using his demonic power, his blood was being stimulated, despite the low rank of that core. He also mentions that as long as he uses the consciousness within him, he will be able to establish and grow the potential of that body, especially in terms of synchronization. Joel, who was watching the scene, asks Dada if she could feel that boy's synchronization rising, and the woman agrees, looking impressed. Tang, who was a bit shocked, realizes that the synchronization rate of that boy had jumped to 40% and was still climbing. He also comments that he remembers Liu's synchronization rate was at 39%, but Aang had already surpassed the girl. Our protagonist then, in an imposing manner, asks his teacher not to get distracted. He charges toward him with a punch aimed at his teacher. The man is caught off guard, and Aang manages to land a solid hit on Tang's chest. However, the teacher is able to defend himself with his arms, while thinking that the boy's speed was twice as fast as usual and that his stats had increased. Seeing that his plan had worked, the only thing the boy says is that it was a feint, and right after that, he braces against the ground preparing to kick Yao. He manages to hit the blonde's leg, causing him to lose balance and begin to fall toward the ground. Still in the air, he congratulates his student while thinking that he couldn't believe Aang had taken advantage and acted quickly to unbalance him. During his fall, the man tries to regain his balance but notices that Aang was preparing something. Quickly, the boy attempts to land another powerful kick toward the blonde. Joel, watching this spectacle, thinks that it was an incredible series of attacks and wonders where our protagonist gained so much combat experience. Suddenly, someone arrives, saying that fighting so close against someone known for their hand-to-hand combat skills wasn't a good idea. We see that this person is Mr. Sun Gon, who had just arrived there. Dada asks when the man had arrived, and he replies that he had just gotten there, and Joel quickly apologizes for practicing in that arena. Seeing the destruction that had been caused in his training field, Sun says that it was a bit inconvenient, and Joel responds that they would pay for it, and Tang would be responsible for it. The man just replies that it was fine and says that the boy with the same name as the strongest warrior was someone incredible, and he wanted to see how that boy fought. At that moment, with all his strength, Yao Tang manages to immobilize and defend against Aang's kick. He, in an arrogant manner, comments to his student that he had caught the boy in a tight spot. While watching this, Sun Gon remarks that little Tang had always been like that since he was young, and if he saw an opportunity to attack, he would take it immediately. Not to mention, after so many years fighting against demons, he had developed an incredible battle sense. Finally, he comments that to get out of that situation, Aang would have to do something impressive, and he feared that Aang was about to learn a hard lesson. At that moment, the blonde prepares to try to punch the boy. With a smile on his face, our protagonist denies what the man had said and replies that he was the one who had caught his teacher. The boy propels himself as if he were going to do a somersault, but in fact, he does something else. With all the momentum of his power, the boy uses his forehead to land a direct headbutt on Tang's head. All three of the people watching the fight see the teacher being thrown far away by that headbutt and are left impressed. Tang gets genuinely angry with that attack and calls Aang a bastard. After getting up and falling to the ground, our protagonist comments that human bones are pretty strong, but their foreheads are even stronger. He says that now it was his turn to attack and immediately charges at his opponent to try to catch him off guard. The blonde, after recovering from that attack, uses his core power and asks his student not to go all out. Joel shouts that he thinks his friend won't be able to hold back any longer. At that moment, the man punches the ground, creating another crater in that fighting area. After dodging it, Aang is impressed. The man was attacking and defending at the same time and comments that it was incredible. He says that to win, Yao Tang would have to taste a bit of his demonic energy. The young man creates what appears to be an invisible hand and punches the air, launching some rocks toward the teacher and raising a smoke barrier. The man seeing the scene is simply astonished, not understanding anything that happened in front of him. However, not wanting to let his enemy think too much about it, the young man disappears in the blink of an eye. He reappears behind the teacher, aiming to end the battle. Dada, seeing this, comments that our protagonist was using the smoke to get into an opponent's blind spot and that he was literally copying Tang's techniques. However, Gon, who was watching the scene, disagrees and says that it was happening because of Aang's incredible learning ability. Tang, on the other hand, gets irritated, saying that was his technique and immediately moves to attack our protagonist from behind. However, he makes a wrong move and Sun instantly realizes that Yao Tang had lost. Thus, Aang manages to land a full blow on his opponent's stomach. It is then revealed that the boy had missed the punch, and in his mind, Tang thinks that the force was overwhelming and that the boy probably missed on purpose. Our protagonist steps back and tells his captain that if Tang hadn't held back at the start, he wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it and defeat his teacher. The boy also says that since his teacher's forehead was bruised, his vision was blurred, and that's why he thought there were 3 people in front of him. And with a confident pose, he asks if Yao Tang finally believed him. The man remains silent for a moment and in his mind admits that the boy really was a genius. Gon is impressed with the young man and comments that the boy is truly strong. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps can be heard approaching the area. Our protagonist group arrives and Suju asks why the 3 didn't show up for dinner since the Liu family had prepared a variety of delicious dishes. But upon taking a closer look, the young woman notices that there was destruction all over the arena and asks what they had done. Aang responds that most of it was Captain Tang's fault and they quickly approach our protagonist. Then, analyzing the scene, Liu realizes that the captain and Aang were probably fighting. Joel goes up to his friend and states that he had lost, but Aang tries to defend himself, saying that maybe it was because the captain wasn't used to dealing with brats. Gon tells the boy that he didn't mean to be modest and says that they had all trained enough and that they should go celebrate with a good dinner. As he leaves and passes by Sun, Aang comments that he was hungry, and that's why he was heading out first. Stating this, Gun thinks that the boy was strong and knew how to handle things well, and that his intelligence and strength were simply full of potential. The man then calls Liu over to have a conversation with his daughter. He says that the boy wasn't that bad and asks Liu if she was interested in him. The girl, hearing this, becomes completely embarrassed by her father's sudden remark. After that whole situation, we see at the dinner table the 3 squad leaders and our protagonist group, including Liu's father. The martial artist asks for everyone's attention, raising a small cup. Sun says that on behalf of all the citizens living in that city, he would like to thank everyone there for their service and for the warriors who fought in the battle. He also says finally that he was very grateful to our protagonist. Gon thanks the boy for saving his daughter and replies that the pleasure was his and that it was something he had to do anyway. Suddenly, Tang hits the boy squarely on the head and asks why he was drinking when he wasn't even of age. The young man retorts that he was an adult and already 18 years old, since to participate in the warrior exam, one has to be of age. Dada laughs and then just responds that Tang was using the opportunity to get back at Aang. Sun, who was also very pleased with the situation, looks at our protagonist. After that, the man looks at his daughter and comments that it was great that Aang was an adult. The girl, seeing her father's intentions, becomes completely embarrassed, almost wanting to crawl under the ground. She remembers the moment she was talking to him in the arena, and Gon tells her that he had been watching the fight earlier and that the young man was really good. Gon also says that even Liu, who thinks she's above others, must feel attracted to that boy with incredible talents. The girl feels confused, thinking that idea was ridiculous. She asks her father not to be ridiculous and recalls the moment when the boy acted foolishly with her, noting that he was very childish. We return to the present moment where Suju is taking pictures of the food, happy to have so many good things there. Snow, who was also present, comments that back to the topic at hand, he wanted to know how Aang managed to scare that demon and make it flee. Yotang responds for him, saying that the boy could draw a portion of the power from a core and use it temporarily to boost his strength several times. Dada adds that it's similar to the ability the group captains used to harness core strength, and Aang must have unlocked that dormant ability. She also states that this was extremely dangerous since he had never received any training and it could put a great strain on his body. Joel, wanting to join the conversation, finally says that just now, he and Tang Ting fought, and that's what caused the partial destruction of the arena. The boy notes that the amount of strength Aang displayed was incredible, but he needs more training or else his body won't be able to handle the amount of power. While all this was happening, Aang thinks that he couldn't tell them he had already absorbed 2 demon cores and that one of them had the ability to regenerate. He also couldn't mention that this weak body can regenerate instantly, even though he couldn't handle the reaction. Aang just says he should let it go, as he couldn't reveal too much and would just let those people think he had a unique ability. Snow, upon hearing this, says she never knew the boy Aang had that ability and declares it was incredible and that they couldn't fall too far behind him. However, Liu was not happy at all, wondering if that boy really had this kind of ability. Tang Tang says that initially Aang and Liu would be punished for going out at night, but since they killed the Fin demon, they would avoid that punishment. Joel notes that they shouldn't get too happy, as the group competition was still ongoing and their team was in last place, meaning they needed to improve. Aang, on the other hand, agrees and says their group plans to reach the top and won't accept anything less. The narrator explains that a month passed after the demonic wave, and to earn more points, many teams started going on A-rank missions, leading to a shortage. Thus, Liu and the others discussed among themselves and came to an important decision. They would find a golden chicken, betting and using their points, and challenging other groups. The first target group was the Black Weapon group, and we see that their leader was asking if Aang remembered the kick from the last time they fought. Liu ignores him and simply replies that they wanted to bet 10 points on a solo battle. The leader gets irritated but quickly agrees, saying that, however, this time Captain Ji Tang won't be there to stop the fight. All 4 of them, with menacing expressions, then ask the protagonist group to step up. In the city's battle arena, we see 2 people on it, with many others watching. The Black Weapon group leader tells Aang that there were a lot of people watching, and it would be better if the boy didn't come crying afterward. Our protagonist just responds that he shouldn't claim victory yet and asks why he wasn't representing his group as the leader. The redhead replies that the person they have up there is a girl, and he was sure his team would use that as an excuse not to hand over the points after losing. However, fortunately, their leader was also a girl. We then see a beautiful young woman with some bee-like antennae. Aang, seeing that she was being underestimated, simply says he understands and asks them not to underestimate the leader of that group. Finally, he remarks that the girl was not just any unhappy little girl. Suju, wasting no time, starts with her strange habit and takes pictures of Liu, who is about to start the battle. Saichu begins to be covered by a green aura and tells her opponent that they should start the battle quickly, as she wanted to finish it soon. The girl with antennae says that the girl must be the young lady from the Setu family, the girl known as the Sulky Rakshasa. Imposingly, she says that she wants to see how Setu will fare in that battle for the honor of the groups. Before letting her opponent continue provoking her, the white-haired girl charges at her adversary, wielding her weapon. With a giant needle in hand, the girl with antennae manages to defend herself promptly. As she defends herself instantly, the young woman panics, realizing that even though Setu only had a green core, she was moving like someone with a blue core. For some reason, Liu uses her 2 fingers to touch the body of that little bee, and her opponent's veins begin to turn green. She then uses the ability called Disarm, causing the weapon that the vice leader of the Black Weapons was holding to fall to the ground. The white-haired girl thinks she was right. Despite those veteran groups having become warriors before them, they all rely too much on teamwork. Situ's opponent has her hands immobilized and can't do anything more, and in her mind, she thinks that young woman inserted her energy into her muscles. Liu comments that her opponent was leaving herself too open to attacks, and that's a taboo in hand-to-hand combat. She begins to strike the bee girl in front of her relentlessly. The leader of the Black Weapons thinks that Situ is hitting all the joints and tendons of his ally. In the blink of an eye, the girl finishes her attack, and that little bee falls to the ground defeated. Finally, Setu says that her family is better at hand-to-hand combat than any of them could imagine. Then she thanks them for the victory and begins to leave the scene. Everyone in the audience is impressed with the skill of that little genius girl. Aang is happy that his group finally earned 10 points and asks the leader of the black weapons not to forget to transfer them. Annoying, the leader thinks that Sidu Liu is very strong. He then says that he will be the next to fight and asks if the girl accepts that challenge for another 10 points. Liu immediately agrees, extremely happy with the possibility of winning another 10 points. However, Aang steps forward and states that their leader had just finished fighting and needed to rest. So he says that he will fight in her place. The redhead gets irritated, saying that Aang had no right to do that, then asserting that he would only fight against the actual leader. Our protagonist, on the other hand, responds that this is precisely why he should fight, as to face the leader, the redhead must get through him first. Mocking his opponent, the boy states that if the redhead didn't have the courage to fight, it wasn't his fault. The vice leader, however, says that this is a terrible way to start a fight. The boy then agrees and says that he's going to beat Aang so badly that even his mother won't recognize him, and all of his comrades can't believe he fell for that. Snow tells her friend that their colleague Aang is about to fight, and the girl reveals that she was already taking pictures. The two opponents climb onto the arena structure and face each other. The leader of the black weapons, without hesitation, promptly materializes his weapon. He says he switched to the training weapon that uses air bullets, so Aang didn't need to worry about getting hurt, although it would still hurt. Upon hearing this, our protagonist is impressed that training bullets exist, as back in the day, there was no such thing. While warming up, the boy asks his opponents to make sure to aim well. One of the members of the Black Weapons comments that the boy was really a novice, as their leader's aim was known as something incredible among all warriors. The redhead says that Aang was very confident and would let him use any weapon he wanted, but he shouldn't cry after losing. The boy thinks that he only had a dagger with him, but the weapon he used in his past life made him nostalgic, as that weapon was incredibly unique. He then responds that he had no preferences and would just use his fists, and that should do the trick. Aang's opponent, upon hearing this, is impressed by how bold the boy was. The other Black Weapons members question what Aang was talking about and if he was going crazy. The redhead begins to laugh, asking if the boy was really going to fight with just his fists, then declaring that all rookies are arrogant. He says he gave Aang the chance, but since the boy didn't choose a weapon, he would let him fight as he wished. Finally, the leader states that, however, he would speak because even a lion trying to kill a rabbit does its best to succeed, and therefore he wouldn't give the boy any chances. Our protagonist, already bored with all the drama, simply replies that it was fine and he should just do his best. Snow, who was also in the audience, comments that she would love to see their faces after discovering that Aang single-handedly killed a demon with a fin and won a fight against Yo Tang. Liu, hearing this, doesn't believe that Aang actually won the fight against the captain and says that it was annoying, wondering if that guy was better than her. She also thinks again about what her father had said every time she sees that idiot's face, but asserts that it was impossible and she shouldn't think about that kind of thing. At this moment, the judge who is mediating the battle between our protagonists finally signals for them to begin. In the blink of an eye, as soon as the battle starts, the redhead creates distance by heading in another direction. He thinks that the greater the range of the weapon, the stronger the damage, and that's why he would open 1,000 holes in the boy's body before he could even reach him. Liu notices that instead of shooting immediately, the guy was using his agility to find a better position, so Aang might be in trouble. Our protagonist says to himself that since the captains know his strength, there was no longer a need to hide it, and his goal was to finish first. The guy also thinks that to fight the demon that was inside his body, he would need to recover his strength from his past life, including his weapons. And not only that, he would need to be better than in his previous life, so he needed to get stronger than before to have a chance against that creature. Seeing that his opponent was standing still, the redhead finally reaches the distance he wanted and prepares to fire with his enormous weapon while aiming at our protagonist. He fires a burst of air that reaches an absurd speed, even causing the recoil of the weapon to push him back with force. At that moment, Aang finally awakens, stating that this is why he would use the demon inside him to become stronger and surpass it. Thus, after refocusing on the battle, Aang easily dodges the shot, letting it pass by his side. Without hesitation, the boy takes advantage of the movement and uses a push from the ground to charge at his enemy, drastically reducing the distance between them. At an incredibly absurd speed, he heads toward the redhead leader while activating his core, which begins to emit a reddish aura. With his weapon in hand, the redhead reloads it and says afterward that he knew his opponent would charge. He comments that his right hand is homing bullets and calls Aang a damn fool, firing at his enemy right after. Those projectiles head toward our protagonist, while the guy thinks that these sticky high-speed bullets are difficult to dodge even for someone with a blue core. He also mentions that as long as one of them hits, the rest of the bullets will follow suit and hit the target. On the other hand, our protagonist was pleased, saying that it was perfect since he provoked that guy to be his opponent so he could showcase his strength. He uses his water-type ability, transforming into liquid and starting to dodge the projectiles. The other members of the Black Weapon gang don't understand how that guy dodged the leader's bullets and comment that the speed was as elastic as water. In the blink of an eye, the young man appears in front of his opponent and the redhead says he was planning to use his final move to win. One of the crazies in the audience comments that the leader's weapon has the ability to store energy inside it, and the energy will combine with the bullets and fire a burst. Thinking he was already winning the battle, the redhead says he wanted to see how our protagonist would dodge that precise and explosive bullet at such a distance. But without letting the guy celebrate, Aang starts using his wood-type ability in his hand. He makes some roots grow and appear at the redhead's feet, holding him and trapping him. After that, accidentally, the man ends up firing his shot upward, and everyone in the audience is impressed by that. Aang finally grabs the weapon his opponent was using and deflects it from his direction, preparing to punch him. He manages to hit one of his opponent's joints squarely, making him drop the weapon. Immediately after, the boy kicks the redhead, launching him away without his armament. All the members of the Black Weapon tribe who were watching the fight see their leader being thrown far away and become worried. Stepping on his enemy's weapon, our protagonist celebrates, finally earning 20 points. The redhead, mad with rage, wonders how that happened. On the other hand, our protagonist's group starts celebrating, stating that he did an amazing job, and Liu comments that even she couldn't follow his speed. The narrator then concludes that Aang won 30 points from the Black Weapon group, and Aang and Liu's battles caused many teams to challenge them. After tasting the fruits of their labor, the 4 warriors from Liu's group began using the point battle rules to earn more points. With Snow and Tomo's victories, Liu's group had more wins than losses, and their points slowly accumulated. With each battle, their group rose significantly in the rankings. Finally, by the end of the month, Liu's group reached first place in the squad ranking and earned a chance to participate in the final competition. Thus, the final battle between the top 3 groups was about to begin. In another location, which appeared to be a coliseum, Dada was saying that every time they entered the city at the end of the month, seeing that place always moved her. Joel asks his friend how long it took for Liu's group to climb from last place to the top of the rankings, noting that it's not an easy task for rookies. Jel also says she heard that those kids used points as bets and fought against other groups, ending up winning more than they lost. The girl states that this method was very desperate and says Tang Tang should have stopped them. The blonde, on the other hand, replies that they relied on their own strength to win those points and there was no reason to stop what they were doing. Yao Tang, recalling the fights, notes that he closely observed all the members of the group, and the other 2, Snow and Suju, were also very good. The 3 friends finally arrive at the gate leading to the Coliseum and stop in front of it for a moment. Joel says it's the first time in many years that a rookie group has made it to the finals between the 3 squads, and the news has spread so much that everyone probably already knows. Tang then places his hand on the gate and quickly opens it. The man states that he's excited to see who will be the final champion of the competition. Immediately after, we see that there were several warriors in the audience. A pink-haired girl couldn't believe that an unknown rookie group had climbed the rankings and reached the finals. It's revealed that the pink-haired girl was the leader of the winning group from Dada and Gel, the Starflower group. The winning group from Joel, the Splendor group, was nearby, and their leader was also quite surprised that Yao Tang's winning group was made up of rookies. Suju was also there, stretching while taking pictures of the place, and she comments that it seems like all the groups are ready to begin. Snow replies that the Starflower and Splendor groups are the strongest teams, led by Gel and Joel, and are quite famous throughout the city of Helios. The boy mentions that there's even a rumor that the next 3 squad leaders, specifically the 3 group leaders, will take on the position of squad leader. Our protagonist, who was also stretching, questions if those groups were really that amazing, and if it's true, they need to work even harder. The boy thinks that despite his body being weak, thanks to his secret ability, he should be able to fight at a high level of strength, and maybe win that competition. Finally, Gel arrives at the center of the Coliseum and immediately calls for her group to come to her. Without hesitation, the Starflower group quickly goes to their leader, showing great submission to Gel and seeing the girl as a mother figure. They begin to say that the Starflower group was ready to take first place and wanted an extra reward if they achieved that. The leader of the Splendor group arrives and comments that the reward the girls were asking for was something very trivial, and asks if that was all their group could think of. The boy also says that his group's wish was to go to a rank B city and see strong warriors to fight against, not to buy clothes. The leader of Dada's group responds that the boy didn't know what he was talking about and that buying clothes was something really important to the girls, calling him an idiot. Joel and Yao Tang remark that both groups had a lot of energy, and right after, they descend from the sky into the center of the Coliseum. The blue-haired boy questions whether the groups will keep fighting until they fall in love, and both group leaders complain about him saying such things. Yao Tang looks around and realizes that his students were distant, so he quickly turns and calls Liu's group to start the competition. Before finished stretching and determined to win, they all walk with confidence toward their teacher. After all the squads get into formation, Tang Tang begins his speech and says that everyone there already knows each other, at least minimally. Therefore, he would skip introductions and jump straight to what matters. He explains that the competition will have 2 segments, divided between a group competition and an individual battle, and points will determine the winner. Dada Gel starts speaking and comments that the rules and more details will be provided when the competition begins. She says that she knows everyone there is aiming for first place to earn a reward, so the prize for this competition would not be a disappointment. Joel is the next to speak. The young man informs them that first place will receive the opportunity to intern in a rank B city for a week. Upon hearing this, all the members of the other groups, including Liu's, start celebrating. Snow asks her friend what she would do if she could go to the rank B city, and Suju replies that she would buy a new camera. Yao Tang then asks all group leaders to head over to him. While the leaders do this, all the other members remain excited, talking about the prize of that competition. Amidst all the commotion, our protagonist seemed a bit lost, not as excited as the others. In his mind, the young man reflects that there was still a lot he didn't understand about that era, and one of those things was that their cities were not divided by rank. The young man mentions that Snow had told him that Helios City was rank C, one of the lowest, followed by a rank B city, and so on. Aang explains that the city's ranks are evaluated according to the strength levels of the warriors, and the more fins a warrior's core has, the bigger the city they reside in. Finally, the boy reports that warriors with cores of 3 or 4 fins and even 5 reside and protect rank cities. And the city that classifies all the others is the only one with an S rank in the world, the City of Dawn. It is also called the City of Hope and is located at the center of the continent, being extremely large. In addition, they don't just have warriors with 6 and 5 fins, but also the fighter with the strongest core, the 7-fin core. With that, memories surface and Aang questions how good that city must be compared to the one he led and wonders if the city he commanded still exists. The man also wonders if his companions from his past life were still alive. However, Suju calls for our protagonist, breaking the trance he was in. Snow walks past the girl along with Aang, saying that her brother loved to stay in the clouds. The young woman points to Liu and tells Aang that he should stop daydreaming as it was their time to shine. Then, after drawing a lot number, the group leader tells our protagonist and his colleagues that they were the first. The Splendor Group and Liu's group stand face to face for the challenge, and Yao Tang notes that the weapons have been switched to training mode. Suiju comments that they still hadn't decided on a name for the group, and Snow responds that they need to choose a good name that sounds cool. Aang agrees and says that they should discuss that after the fight, but on the other hand, Liu didn't care about that and was nervous. The leader of the Splendor Group, with a smug expression, comments that a group of slackers like Liu's couldn't dream of winning first place. Next, he asks each of his colleagues to focus on one person from the enemy group because he would fight Liu, and they all agree. Tang Tang raises his hand high and shortly after starts the competition. The three members of the Splendor Group split up in the blink of an eye. Upon seeing this, Situ immediately realizes that their plan was to go after individual fights, and it would have been a good plan if their combat strength were high. However, her group advances in sync, and the girl asserts that the enemy's plan wouldn't work because they were fighting as a team. During the advance, Aang thinks that his leader had already understood the enemy's strategy and comments that for their group, the best option was to attack the enemy leader. He explains that the biggest weakness of an individual fight is that you only fight for yourself, and if the group leader falls, the other members lose morale. The other three from Splendor change their plan and, in sync, rush to attack Setu. Without remorse, they all prepare to defeat the girl before she can react. However, she was expecting this, so Liu calls for cover, and her entire team defends her. The rival leader questions whether the kids really think they can beat him and declares that they were wrong. Without hesitation, the young man charges at his rival, not letting her get away with it. The two leaders face each other, and the blonde boy gathers red energy in his hands. With a creepy smile on his face, he asks Setu to fight with everything she's got. Shortly after, the boy extends his hand, and the red energy within it begins to emit light. Upon seeing this, Situ immediately asks all her colleagues to close their eyes and protect themselves. She also notices that it even affected the crazy guy's teammates and was blinding everyone in that arena. Yao Tang praises that ability and comments that it's strong in individual fights, but in a group it affects his allies, and Joel mentions that he had already told the boy that, but it was no use. Dada comments that she thinks the blonde boy still needs to encounter obstacles, and only then would he make changes to his fighting style. After this act, the blonde prepares to attack Liu with his dagger while saying that a rookie like her wouldn't be able to withstand that light attack to her face. He also mentions that by defeating her, the whole group would destabilize, and after that, he lands a direct blow to Liu's stomach. However, upon doing so, he notices something very strange in front of him. Aang arrives, separating and distancing the blonde from the leader of his group, Liu. With water glasses on his face, the young man questions whether his enemy was crazy to use a technique that affected even his own companions. Annoyed, he raises his leg as high as possible to use an axe kick. After that, he successfully strikes his enemy's shoulder, slamming him to the ground. After taking this powerful blow, the blonde immediately backs off and puts some distance between them. Irritated, he questions his enemy about when the boy had put on those water glasses. Our protagonist ignores him and responds that fighting in a group battle without considering your companions was a terrible idea. The boy is happy that his plan worked, and at that moment, the blonde's ability fades, allowing Liu to land. She sees her companion in front of her and, confused, tries to understand what was happening. Imposingly, Aang begins to walk in the other direction, and as he passes by Situ, he comments that he'll leave the rest to her. Liu, on the other hand, is doubtful, wanting to know how Aang struck that guy when no one else could see. Situ then prepares to advance and remarks that, after all, Aang wasn't so bad. Without hesitation, she uses the strength of her legs to propel herself toward her opponent, who had his guard down. The blonde is furious at the audacity of that girl advancing toward him like that and comments that he will blind her again with his light attack. However, he immediately realizes he can't move his arm because it was dislocated by Aang. At that moment, the leader of the Splendor Group is hit squarely with a punch right in the stomach by Liu. The young woman comments that the boy was right and states that battles should indeed be finished quickly. With her dagger in hand, the girl seizes the chance to strike several points on her opponent. Meanwhile, Aang was quite relaxed and only helped Snow and Suju a little, but they were going to win anyway. After goofing around a bit to help his groupmates, our protagonist turns around. Everyone there sees Siu standing tall and realizes that the girl had won the battle against the arrogant blonde. Completely exhausted, the other three realize there was nothing more they could do and basically give up. Yao Tang then tells his companions that everything was over, and seeing this, Joel comments that he didn't expect it. Dada, seeing this scene, tells Tang Tang that her student Aang still hadn't used that ability. In another place, waiting for her moment, the leader of the Starflower group was sitting. Confused, the young woman questions whether the blonde had really lost and asks if it was because of Situ Liu. Embarrassed, the boy confirms with all his words that it was because they underestimated the girl's group. The boy says they would be next, and as longtime rivals, he would give them a warning. A while later, we see our protagonist's group standing just waiting for their new opponent. The pink-haired girl thinks her mood was ruined by what the Splendor group had said. Dada Gel then announces that Liu's group would be up against the Starflower group and that all weapons had been switched to training mode. And finally, she prepares and starts the battle between the two groups. The leader of the Star group says that her group shouldn't worry about anything Splendor said and that they should just repeat what they had trained. Snow, on the other hand, begins to charge one of his abilities and puts all his strength into a single punch. He quickly strikes the ground, creating a crater. A wave of energy is emitted throughout the arena, and our protagonist's group is surrounded by a shield. With that, Aang thinks it's the perfect moment and then begins to use his ability. Several vines and roots begin to emerge from the ground, grabbing and trapping the rival girls, who are completely confused. Our protagonist thinks it's working and that the elements he absorbs still functioned. He tells himself that he already had wood and water and wanted to find out which other elements were missing. To follow through with the plan, Liu finally gives the order for Snow to do something, and the boy promptly agrees, getting ready. Without hesitation, he surrounds himself with an orange shield and charges at his opponents. The pink-haired girl orders everyone on her team to dodge the attack, and the girls follow her command. She also tells her team to spread out and regroup quickly, while thinking that they had been forced out of their formation. However, without giving the girl much time to think, Suju and Liu charge at her with a combined attack. The two land a kick on the girl, who barely manages to defend herself from both blows. The girl calls out to her teammates for help, but when she looks, she realizes that her three companions are engaged in hand-to-hand combat against Snow and Aang. Alone, our protagonist manages to land a punch on two girls from the Starflower group. Seeing this scene, we finally flash back to the moment when the leader of the Splendor group had given advice to the group of girls. We see the boy telling the short-haired leader that she should be careful with that person named Aang because he was probably the strongest in Liu's group. The boy also says that that little demon had managed to control the entire battlefield by himself. Back to the present moment, Suju, holding her dagger, tells the short-haired girl that she should stay focused. However, proud as she is, the girl responds that she doesn't need to do that since she is an agility user. Suju laughs at her and mentions that she is also an agility user, and then suddenly appears behind the girl. The girl prepares to land another kick on her opponent and bring an end to the fight. In fact, she manages to apply a jujitsu move called a triangle on her opponent, choking her with her thighs. Seeing this, Dada Gel comments that it looks like the fight is already over, and Joel replies that Liu's group has won all the battles in this group competition. All the groups fall into formation, and Yao Tang explains that in this phase of the individual fights, they can challenge any member of any group at any time. The leaders of the Splendor and Starflower groups were completely furious with their defeat, unable to accept it. Both of them, at the same time, say that they want to challenge Aang from Liu's group. Seeing this, Yao Tang responds that individual battles can only be one-on-one, and they should decide who would go first. However, with all the arrogance he had, our protagonist responds that there was no problem, and to save time, he accepted fighting both captains at once without any difficulty. So for the first individual battle, Aang gets ready. He thinks that this is his last fight and that he should start taking things seriously. The two captains from the other groups also prepare, and the blonde boy comments that it seems like they were being underestimated, while the girl says she will make Aang regret it. Dada says that the rules are the same as before, and the battle won't end until one side admits defeat or can no longer fight, and then she finally starts the fight. The two of them each move to a different side of Aang, intending to surround him. The blonde boy asks the short-haired girl not to forget the plan, and the girl asks the boy to stop bothering her. Aang, on the other hand, starts to gather momentum with his legs as if he were going to jump into the air. But in fact, he charges at one of his enemies, the leader of the Splendor group. The girl who was with him notices that Aang was extremely fast and warns her ally to be careful. The boy replies that he wasn't that easy to take down and asks Aang to stop underestimating him while preparing his light attack. Seeing this, the girl realizes that this glow means they were about to skip straight to that step of the plan. Then we flash back to the past where the blonde boy told the short-haired girl that they needed to win that fight, and only then could they earn that prize. The boy also mentions that he had a plan that could lead them to victory, and the only thing the girl had to do was wear that special battle glasses. The boy explains that these glasses can protect her eyes from his light ability, and at the moment he blinds Aang. The short-haired girl should hit him with everything she had and with all her strength. With those glasses in hand, the girl couldn't believe that the selfish boy was giving them to her. The blonde boy responds that Aang wouldn't be easy to take down, and if they wanted a chance to go to the Rank B city, they needed to work together. Back in the present moment, the leader of the Splendor group tells Aang that this light is 5 times stronger than the previous one, and then he uses his ability right in our protagonist's face. Dada Gel and her friends comment that the brat was gathering a lot of energy to form a beam of light. It was stronger than the one he had used earlier. Suju, who was taking pictures, has her vision blurred and complains about it, as she couldn't do what she enjoyed so much. At that moment, the pink-haired girl comments that the guy must have lost his vision for a while and would maximize her speed to defeat him. She starts running toward our protagonist, aiming to end the battle immediately. After getting close enough behind him, the young woman states that she will finish Aang with one attack. However, the young man doesn't seem to be affected by the light and turns around, commenting that he was right and that she really was the one who would attack him. She feels a crushing pressure and wonders what was in that guy's gaze, as it seemed like she was the victim of something terrifying and was about to drown in the ocean. Aang then begins using his water element ability and surrounds the girl with it, as if he were capturing her. With a hand made of water, the boy manages to trap the young woman within his abilities. The blonde, who was practically blind from using his light beam, questions why his companion was screaming instead of attacking Aang. The girl responds that she was being captured, her glasses fell off, and she couldn't see anything. The boy with black and white hair apologizes, and immediately after trapping her, he says their plan would fail. Controlling a root, he manages to hit the blonde's chin squarely, knocking him out. After that, he throws the short-haired girl far away as the two allies go flying. The two group leaders fall to the ground, completely defeated. With the impact of the students hitting the ground, a cloud of dust rises, and Yao Tang, seeing this, thinks that if those kids aren't careful, they might end up getting hurt. Worried about his students and their teammates, the man quickly launches himself into the arena to see what was going on. After some time in the air, he finally lands on the ground, dispersing some of the dust. Upon opening his eyes and looking ahead, he feels that Aang was emanating an utterly terrifying aura. Our protagonist, standing imposingly, simply tells his teacher that the battle was already over. Everyone from the Splendor and Starflower groups sees the dust spreading across the arena and starts wondering if their leaders had won. However, Liu replies that no and says she was just guessing, but it seemed that Aang was the one who had won. As the dust clears, it is finally revealed that the two leaders had lost and were lying defeated on the ground, while only our protagonist remained standing. His group starts running toward him to celebrate with their teammate. Snow says it was a good job and asks her colleague how he managed to disperse that flash of light, congratulating the boy. The young man simply responds that he took the glasses their enemies were wearing, and right after that, Snow hugs him, saying he did a good job. Seeing this, Liu wonders why she always felt like that boy was hiding something. Yo Tang then calls Liu's group and asks them to form up. Their captain congratulates his students and declares that their group was in first place and had won the competition. She also tells Aang that he did a great job since every one of his battles had been a wonderful surprise, especially the fact that he fought back despite being attacked by two people. The boy becomes embarrassed, thinking that he was originally the strongest warrior of humanity, and even with a weak body, he couldn't lose to those kids. Tang says that, in any case, the next day they will travel through the underground tunnel to head to the nearest Rank B city and thus start the internship week. All four of them are extremely happy, especially Snow and Suju, with the news. The teacher also reports that they should finish things up there and that his students should return and prepare, then meet there in the morning. Later, outside, Snow and Suju talk about what they would do, and Aang asks what his friend Liu was going to do, and the girl says she was thinking about it. Watching those young people leave, Joel comments that Aang was scary, and that if they used their full strength, probably the three of them wouldn't be able to defeat the boy. Tang, hearing this, agrees and replies that the young man doesn't belong to that city, and he will probably keep moving forward, going farther and farther until he reaches his peak. Joel says it was really a good idea for Tang to take his students through the tunnel, since down there it was much safer compared to the surface. Todd also says that they should be on alert anyway, as some demons can still get in there, and Ji asks his comrades not to worry. The narrator explains that the underground tunnels are curved and confusing tunnels that were created centuries ago, but nowadays are only used by a few people. Inside one of these tunnels, we see an agile warrior running desperately for his life. However, something like red energy catches up to him, striking him. The warrior, unfortunately, is sliced and completely defeated by a creature. With the body of another victim in its hand, the creature states that these human warriors are weak and that it was bored. The monster also says that it was lost there and questions how it managed to stray from its path. We then see there was a two-finned demon with unknown abilities and elements, but it had already defeated 32 warriors. The next day, Suju was impressed by that underground tunnel, so she says that it was the first time she had seen such an ancient structure. While taking her photographs, the young woman comments that it seems to have been built years ago, and asks about the age of the tunnel. Yotang replies that it has existed since before him, so it's extremely old. The girl notices that it seems extremely empty there and asks if the boy was sure that there were still people using it. Their teacher explains that after the Battle for Dawn, where many brave warriors sacrificed themselves, the expansion slowed and energy crystals became scarce. And due to the extreme lack of crystals and energy they used, that underground network was gradually abandoned, and this tunnel was built during King Aang's era. Suju then turns to her colleague and comments that the tunnel was built during the era of that king who had the same name as her friend. Our protagonist, who seems a bit distracted, just replies that it was exactly that. For some reason, veins begin to appear on Yotang's forehead, and the boy gets quite irritated. He yells at his students, saying that just because he had the same name as the king, it didn't mean he was the one who built it, and he shouldn't joke about the greatest warrior. Our protagonist gives a small laugh and says that the teacher didn't need to ruin his joke, and Suju comments that the captain was quite irritated. Even Liu, who is extremely serious, gives a small laugh and calls Aang a fool. Realizing he had lost his composure, the teacher regains his posture and thinks that he had become too relaxed while interacting with those kids. He tells his students that they should be more aware of their surroundings and that it was time to move on. Aang thinks that he was embarrassed since the plans for that tunnel were suggested by him in the past. But there was something wrong with what Yotang had said, as while it was called an underground tunnel, it was actually a massive network of underground routes and wasn't meant to connect all the large and small cities. Instead, it was the safest and most commercially valuable route in the entire world. Placing his hands on the wall, the boy thinks that he could never have imagined that the greatest plan that could have been made that year would eventually become a complete ruin. Curious, Snow asks if the energy crystals the captain was talking about were similar to the demonic cores they used, and the man agrees. He explains that a demon's core can provide immense strength to a warrior, but something happens during the refining process of these cores. And according to the basic principles, after each new mistake, the state of those refined cores would result in a massive energy core, an energy crystal. Tang also informs them that these crystals were strong enough to power an entire city, similar to what they called electricity. With that, many high-class cities organized demon hunts to collect these demonic cores in order to refine them into energy crystals. Finally, Tang states that these crystals are distributed according to the ranking of each city, and this time he would be taking all his students to a rank B city called Peather, not only to help improve their experience and knowledge, but also to obtain the distribution. Confused, Suju asks what would happen if the energy crystal-less city was completely depleted and there were no extra cores for them to exchange. And the man replies that in such a case, the entire city would be completely paralyzed. Hearing this, everyone in Liu's group is shocked by the possibility. Tang explains that without the energy it provides, normal life would be unable to continue, and the most important functions of the city, as well as its defense mechanisms, would become useless. Finally, without those defense mechanisms and the inability to continue functioning normally, people would be forced to leave their homes and seek refuge. However, the young man comments that there's no need to worry, as the crystals of Helios City can hold up just fine for another 3 months. Feeling relieved by this new possibility, Suju sticks her tongue out at her captain, saying he was very mean for talking like that as if it were a terrifying event. Suddenly, the man stops and says that his students need to be fully prepared this time since, as a rank B city, Pether has incredible warriors. He even heard that one of the warriors with a 3-fin core managed to reach a synchronization rate of 69%. Upon hearing this, Snow and Suju's eyes light up, and the boy says that's amazing and his friend agrees. With this, our protagonist starts to feel envious and thinks that the guy right behind them was a 7-fin warrior with a synchronization rate of 96%. Suddenly, Suju sees a huge red button beside her and feels the urge to press it. However, immediately, our protagonist tells the girl to stop and not press the button. After giving his student a smack on the head, Tang says that she shouldn't touch things carelessly there, and thank God Aang was watching. He explains that this is an emergency button that forces the core to shut down, and it's used to close the tunnels and separate them in emergency situations. We then see that on top of the red button, it reads complete closure. The man informs them that as soon as this button is pressed, a thick metal wall will close the tunnel, coming down from those circles in the ceiling. And this can only be used in emergency situations to keep other tunnels and cities safe. In his mind, our protagonist thinks that his most powerful tunnel ability was still working fine at least. Suddenly, he feels something that leaves him completely terrified and states that he sensed an intense bloodlust. The boy reports that it's coming from in front of them and comments that it seems like something is approaching them. He then activates his core and a dagger begins to materialize right in his hand. Immediately, Yao Tang senses the same smell of blood and realizes what his student is doing. Upon realizing that his student had sensed it before he did, the young man considers the possibility that Aang has a sharper nose than his, but dismisses the thought immediately. The young man calls for everyone to prepare for battle, and Tang tells his students to drop their backpacks and get into formation. From the end of the tunnel, we see a huge blood stain and an overwhelming pressure emanating from there. Seeing that strange blood in front of him, Yao Tang becomes very frightened, realizing that it's coming toward the city of Pether. The man sees in front of him the silhouette of a humanoid with a core in his chest, and he wonders if this being is a demon. However, Tang realizes that, in fact, it's a warrior from the city of Pether walking toward them. The warrior says a few things, but is completely debilitated and wounded by something. Suddenly, his eyes roll back, and he collapses to the ground, unable to stand any longer. Our protagonist and his teacher try to understand what was happening and what had caused that young man to get all those injuries. Devastated, the boy says before passing out completely that a demon wave hit the city of Pether, and that the city had already raised the abandoned city siren. Upon hearing this, Liu asks his master what the abandoned city siren means and wonders if they should offer support. The captain then explains that regardless of the city, there is only one situation where the abandoned city siren would be sounded, and that is when all the city's warriors have died and there is no one left to protect it. Hearing this, Snow, Liu, and Suiju are in complete shock, unable to believe it. Our protagonist realizes that the city was taken by demons and wonders how many people lost their lives because of it. Suddenly, a loud noise comes from his side and sparks begin to fly from the back of the tunnel. An energy cut passes between Yao Tang and Aang, hitting the fallen warrior on the ground. Frightened, Aang gets irritated because he was distracted and wasn't able to react to it. Then the wave of energy that hit the wounded soldier pulls him into the darkness. A demonic hand grabs the man by the skull and says it found him. The demon, in an imposing manner, looks confused, wondering why there were still people there. The creature also says that if they didn't kill all those people, it couldn't report the success of its mission, and at that moment, the warrior tells everyone there to run. Irritated and stating that the dead should remain silent, the being disconnects the head of that poor human. The 2-fin demon declares that it will continue killing those beings and then starts walking toward the surviving humans. The creature becomes excited, seeing so many potential victims, and draws its weapon, which was practically a whip with a blade. It wonders who it should kill first among those people, while twirling that object. The monster quickly decides and throws its weapon at its target. We see that the chosen person was Snow, who was in shock with the attack coming toward her. The one who protects her is Yao Tang, who had just summoned his weapon to counterattack. After defending his student, he grabs his opponent's weapon to prevent the attack from continuing. With that, the fire-engulfed object changes its trajectory, going upward and causing an explosion on the ceiling. Seeing this, the creature becomes quite interested, commenting that Tang Tang was actually good, better than the one it had faced before. Aang's teacher thinks that a 2-fin fire element demon is stronger than he had expected and remarks that he couldn't take another hit. Grating his teeth, the captain also thinks that now is not the time to be fighting the creature, as he needed to protect his kids and had no time to think. Suddenly, the man grabs Aang's arm, who was ready to fight, and says that their only option is to flee. So immediately, Tang starts pulling all his students away from the creature. The creature, in a terrifying manner, questions if the human really thought he could escape. It uses its fire ability to propel itself and bounce several times off the walls, and in a moment, the monster appears behind Tang. The blonde asks his students to immediately go through the gate as he was going to press the button, but at that moment, the fire beast was already behind them, ready to capture them. Aang says something to his teacher and pushes his classmates and his teacher past the gate to protect them. Unable to keep his balance, the boy also rolls across the floor. Immediately, upon turning around, Tang Tang realizes what his student was thinking. On the other hand, while walking slowly behind his victim, the monster says that he will survive just a little longer. It declares that it wants all those humans to die, and right after saying that, the beast charges once more. At that moment, our protagonist reaches the button and uses his knife to break the glass. Along with that, he also presses the button, causing the doors of that entrance to begin closing. His friends try to stop this to prevent their companion from being left behind. However, before they could help, the only thing they see is the image of Aang almost being attacked by the creature. Even so, our protagonist puts on a confident face as if he were asking his friends to save themselves. Leo tries to bring him back, but it was already too late, and the door had completely closed. The girl starts banging on the metal door to find out if her friend was still okay. Yao Tang remembers that before being pushed, Aang had asked him to protect his 3 students. Therefore, he stands up and asks his students to calm down immediately. He says that Aang created a chance for them to survive, and for that reason, they couldn't let it go to waste, and that it wasn't safe there, so they needed to flee. Snow says that the demon was a 2-fin demon, and even for Aang, facing that wouldn't be easy. Suju agrees and says they couldn't abandon him. Liu joins in and declares that they should break down that metal door and rescue Aang. However, Tang explains that the door was reinforced with a unique material and further strengthened with an alloy of metals, and it could withstand even the attack of a 3-fin demon. He also mentions that the door is not easy to break, and even though it was unfortunate, there was nothing they could do. Even so, Snow doesn't give up and says that her teacher should think of something because they had to rescue Aang. The young man then says that even if Joel and Dada were there, it would be difficult to fight that monster. However, while thinking about this, the young man remembers something and states that there is another route they can take. As they run in one direction, Tang explains that these are tunnels that divide, and one of them leads to the Renka city, where they could go to ask for their help. After almost passing the entrance, the young man immediately stops and says they should go that way. He, along with his 3 students, enters the dark tunnel and runs without hesitation. At that moment, the young man affirms to himself that choosing that route means everyone there believes Aang will survive until the reinforcements arrive. Then we go back to the moment when Aang had just pressed the button and the demon beast had tried to attack him. It's possible to see that the boy was not hit by the bite, and instead, he placed his dagger inside the creature's mouth, injuring it. After that, he quickly kicks his opponent, sending it flying along with his weapon. Thus, Aang regains his balance in order to summon all his power. The boy is extremely happy because he could finally use all his strength. Then suddenly, he begins to take on his demonic form. At this moment, the creature is extremely confused, not knowing whether Aang was a human or a demon. Aang responds that he himself didn't know. What if the demon had used a bit more strength? He would have had to use that form in front of his comrades, and that would have been bad. However, at that moment, he was curious about the creature's fire element. The monster begins to back away, as that aura was not just from a 1-fin demon, it was even more than that. At this point, our protagonist starts using his wood ability, summoning several vines around him. He uses them to send an attack against his opponent. The beast prepares to retaliate and claims that if the boy was a wood-type demon, its fire element was perfect to counterattack. It uses a shield of flames to protect itself from all those vines. Seeing this, Aang stays silent for a moment, as if apprehensive. The monster says it's going to devour the boy and turn him into its source of power. Suddenly, the beast begins to charge a fireball inside its mouth to shoot at its enemy. Without hesitation, it launches its dragon breath to burn Aang. However, with his incredible agility, Aang manages to dodge that attack. And right after, he advances to counterattack his enemy in close combat. The demon steps back, extremely surprised by that action, and says that Aang cannot even touch it, as he would burn if he got too close. Our protagonist steps back a little and uses his demon ability, which was completely engulfed in flames. He appears behind his opponent and immediately uses his water ability to strike it. Imposingly, the young man questions how his opponent could be so sure that he only had the wood element, and that this was his way of counterattacking. After its core is captured, the 2-fin demon is completely shocked to see that the human had 2 elements. Suddenly, an explosion happens, creating a massive sound there. After that, we see that the only thing left of the demon was its head and core, which were in Aang's hands. After that situation in the tunnel, where the demon appeared, we see several finless demons coming out of there. Our protagonist thinks that those creatures must have been attracted by the noise of the battle, and looking at the fire-imbued core, he wonders what kind of power he will gain. The young man then breaks the core, which releases a huge burst of energy toward the monsters. He begins to absorb the demon's fire while saying that it will become his new power. The fire coming out of his hand goes directly into his core, which starts absorbing it. With that, a transformation begins to take place and something happens to the boy's body. Another horn grows on his head, and after stomping his foot on the ground, several blasts of fire shoot out in all directions. The boy declares that it was splendid and that he could feel that flame burning inside his body. We then see that the evolution of his 2-fin demonic form was complete. The creatures, however, are not intimidated, and many of those finless demons rush toward Aang. He begins to mimic the power he saw his enemy use, and thus a fiery energy appears in his mouth. Aang unleashes that dragon breath, which in an instant incinerates several of the mindless demons. After burning all those creatures, the young man walks calmly in the direction from where the creatures had come. Meanwhile, he calls those creatures cursed and says he will use their screams to console the fallen soldiers that all the demons killed. Amidst the slaughter, the boy walks normally, as if nothing is happening. After some time, a hatch on the ground surrounded by debris comes into view. The hatch is quickly blown open, flying upward and revealing an entrance. Returning to the surface, our protagonist emerges, still in his demonic form. The boy looks around and sees various victims of the demons. He also sees the city of Pether completely destroyed. The boy can't believe what he's seeing as he witnesses a rank B city completely leveled to the ground. He thinks that this was a high-rank demon wave as he walks among the many bodies on the ground. The young man even sees the body of a warrior who was taken out by a wood element demon with a single blow. Meanwhile, in his head, the boy thinks that this was the result of a large area effect ability, and that kind of power belonged to a 3-fin demon. In his mind, he recalls that the squad leader mentioned earlier that Pether City had 2 warriors with 3-fin cores, but he wonders where they were. The boy notices a crow flying toward him, and when he looks back, he sees a scene that leaves him completely traumatized. Pierced by a tree, the 2 warriors with 3-fin cores were lifeless. We see that they were completely massacred by some extremely powerful beast. The young man begins to use his wood power, which slowly rises from the ground. The wood roots reach the bodies of the fallen warriors. After bringing them down to the ground, the boy kneels and says they were admirable warriors. Finally, he covers the warriors' eyes, wishing them peace, and says that at least now they will rest. Imagining what might have happened, the boy can only say that this war was extremely terrible. Suddenly, a person appears behind him, a boy with a knife. Calling him a demon, the red-haired boy starts crying and says that based on our protagonist's appearance, He must be a high-ranked demon. The boy also comments that his life was saved by those warriors, and for that reason, he wouldn't let Aang defile their bodies. With this, our protagonist becomes apprehensive as he had revealed his appearance, and that boy probably wouldn't believe him based on how he currently looked. Before our protagonist could continue thinking about this, several finless demons charge at that poor boy. The boy is hit by a blow and begins to faint as the other demons move in to devour him. However, before that could happen, Aang charges at the creatures, instantly slicing them apart. Right after that, he catches the boy's body so he doesn't fall to the ground. He asks the boy not to say anything and then begins to use his wood power to heal him. Confused, the child tries to understand whether Aang was a demon or a human. However, shortly after saying this, the boy dies, leaving Aang no chance to heal him. Seeing this, the boy is devastated and says that the child was right and he didn't know whether he was a demon or a human. At that moment, more of those finless creatures appear, ready to put an end to our protagonist. Devastated, he begins to rise slowly, thinking that whether he's a demon or a human, it didn't matter because there was one thing he didn't want to change. And that was his decision to kill all the demons. Then he turns and begins to use his fire ability against that horde of creatures. Even with Aang emitting that aura, the creatures remain undeterred by their numbers and charge at the boy. The boy uses his fire power to create wings on his back and charges at the monsters. Our protagonist launches several small balls of light at them, which eventually explode, taking out a good portion of the monsters. After doing that, he lands a bit further away, standing firm on the ground. The young man says that now that he's gathered the flames behind him, he can boost his speed and moreover, use them like matches to trigger explosions. Aang tries to use another ability and launches a fire blast that knocks down some of the monsters. Right after that, he flies up to one of the creatures in the air, grabbing it by the neck to test yet another power. He sets the creature's insides on fire while heading toward the ground to throw it. Still in the air, the boy hurls the creature toward the ground in the direction of several other monsters, while telling the beast to return to the pile of cursed ones from where it came. The monster's body creates a huge explosion, wiping out several creatures that were nearby. With that, the young man thinks that by concentrating fire and embedding it into the demon's body, they become bombs, and thinking of more uses for his abilities helped him a lot. The creatures, seeing their friends eliminated so easily, start trembling and quickly run away as they feel the true strength of our protagonist. However, this time Aang was not in the mood to talk, and using his fire ability, he propelled himself toward the monsters to prevent them from escaping. The young man lands on the ground, causing a massive explosion around him, eliminating all the creatures that tried to flee before they could even understand what had happened. After doing that, he rises imposingly, looking at the remains of the creatures while saying it was too late. Then we see Aang standing on top of a gigantic pile of bodies. The boy thinks that at first he was eager to go to the city of Peather with his group, and now he wonders where his friends are. The boy considers that the energy core of their city can still last for 3 months, but he urgently needs to deliver a crystal to Helios. For that reason, the boy starts looking around and states that he needs to find the place where the crystals were originally hidden and should take at least one back. He thinks that he can't just run around aimlessly. He needs to think about the resources he currently has on hand. The young man gets the idea to use his wood element energy, and several vines start emerging beneath his feet. They spread throughout the city, and the boy thinks that since energy crystals are made from demonic cores, they probably had energy fluctuations around them. The boy, as if hibernating, continues using his wood-type ability, searching the entire city, every corner of it. He even manages to map out practically all of that vast and enormous territory. After digging deep enough and searching everywhere, the boy finally finds it. Aang immediately starts running toward where the much-desired crystal was. The boy thinks that it was underground and that the energy fluctuation was weak, but still, the crystal must be well protected. He jumps into another hatch, descending several meters toward the ground. Looking around, the boy realizes that there were other things down there besides what he was looking for. Our protagonist sees a huge machine and thinks that this is the system that keeps the Rank B city's energy active, and it looks pretty incredible. A voice, as if coming from a radio, emerges, and our protagonist realizes that it was probably an automatic transmission, and that's where the crystal was. He runs toward where he heard it, wondering how many crystals those people managed to store. Upon entering the room, the boy sees only destruction and several people already lifeless. Aang gets angry as those damn demons had already ruined all those crystals. The young man also comments that those few warriors died desperately trying to defend the crystal. After that, our protagonist states that this was a targeted attack, and the demons who entered there already had the idea of destroying all the crystals and were being instructed. Finally, Aang comments that it seems like there are no intact energy crystals left, so he needs to go to the military base to find some supplies and equipment and leave. However, frustrated, the boy states that he needs to find some energy crystals before returning, as if his group fails, the city of Helios will be in complete danger. In the end, he sets the goal of finding a new city within 3 months, and then bringing an energy crystal back to his beloved city. In another location at the battle preparation station, we see a completely destroyed door, and beyond it, a room filled with deep darkness. Suddenly, some lights turn on as if from a vehicle. Out of nowhere, someone steps on the accelerator, and the wheels of that mysterious vehicle begin to spin. We then see that it was our protagonist, who was in a high-tech vehicle, leaving that room with some new clothes he picked up there. He speeds toward a new city. Fearless, the boy declares that he will do it without fail, while we see him wearing stylish sunglasses. Finally, heading toward the desert, Aang leaves behind that poor city that had nothing left. After some time, the boy mentions that the desert outside the city has never been explored and that the fog there will worsen once night falls. He also mentions that all these broken buildings were once places full of life, but now they have probably become nests for demons. Looking at the map, the boy remembers that the next city was marked there and should be in that direction. Aang continues moving between the buildings, but we see that among the rubble, someone was hiding. This stranger uses a knife to cut a rope, causing several pieces of wood to fall in front of Aang's vehicle. With extreme agility, the boy manages to swerve to the side, almost crashing into the debris. Though it was close, our protagonist manages to save himself and avoid a hard crash. Confused, the boy wonders what the hell was happening. Looking at the debris, he realizes it was probably a trap, but questions who could have set it up. Suddenly, a person appears on top of the rubble, and a female voice can be heard. The unknown person orders Aang not to move and demands to know who he was and which hunter group he belonged to. Seeing this, Aang thinks that what he feared the most had truly happened. He encountered a hunter group. The woman, while pointing her weapon at Aang, asks him to state his name, and he thinks that he never imagined he would meet someone from a hunter group there. So he just responds that he wasn't part of a hunter group, but rather a human warrior passing through. However, the girl doesn't believe him, saying that a city warrior would never come to this place alone, and asks if he was a scout for the Silver Wolf Hunters. The boy is confused by this but replies that he wasn't and insists that he already told her he was a part of a hunter group. Frustrated and irritated, the girl pulls the trigger, firing a shot. The shot, however, lands beside our protagonist, missing him. She tells the boy to shut up and says he's part of a bunch of bastards, questioning if any of his companions from the hunter group were still alive. With all this information in his head, he begins to piece things together and assumes that the girl's group was likely attacked by the Silver Wolf Hunters. Aang asks the girl to listen, saying he couldn't prove he was a warrior at the moment, but that she wouldn't gain anything by pointing that gun at him. The girl finally relents and lowers her weapon, pointing it to the ground. Our protagonist, looking to the side, notices more people approaching, and at that moment, the girl also notices and points her gun at him again. However, she ends up getting shot and falls to the ground, both her arms pierced by bullets. Looking to the side, Aang realizes that some bikers were arriving at the scene. One of them is celebrating for taking down the person holding the gun, and we see that they are part of the Silver Wolf Hunter group. With that, the girl, severely wounded by the gunshots, collapses to the ground, hopeless, unable to lift her arms. At that moment, someone approaches her from behind, grabbing her by the head and celebrating their find. The guy, acting like a jerk, tries to get a good look at the girl's face because he's interested in her. She can no longer react as she's completely injured. After examining her, the jerk tells his companions that the girl was a perfect 10, and they should do something with her. However, tired of seeing this scene, our protagonist jumps in and attacks one of the guys who wanted to do something wrong to the girl. The companion of the guy who was struck is completely shocked to see the stranger leap from so far away and attack his friend. Our protagonist says that he didn't want to get involved in private fights between hunter groups, but it seems necessary now, as that group looked like a bunch of terrible bastards. He begins to release his aura while stating that he would give them a chance. Before killing them, the Silver Wolf Hunters should run away. However, ignoring the warning, the guy who saw his companions being defeated draws his gun and prepares to shoot. But before he can do anything, our protagonist grabs the gun and crushes it. Imposingly, he remarks that having a gun pointed at him twice in the same day really pissed him off. Frightened, one of the harassers tries to bargain, saying that if Aang left, his group would let the boy live. But unwilling to hear more nonsense, our protagonist uses his wood ability to summon a tree hand and punch the jerk in the stomach. The guy is thrown several meters away, and seeing this power, the girl from before is left in awe. The hunter notices that Aang had a core embedded in his chest, so he questions whether the young man is a demon or a human. Our protagonist, still holding that rifle, completely destroys it as if it were nothing. Finally, he responds that it's none of that person's business because they would die soon anyway. After that, we hear a scream, and a massacre ensues. After some time, we see Aang healing the wounds of the girl who was threatening him earlier. He says the bullets passed through the muscles of her forearm, so he only needed to repair that. The girl, looking back and seeing the people who were attacking her completely defeated, is impressed. Looking at her arms, she's happy that her wounds are really healed and says that Aang has an amazing ability. Sheikah mentions that she heard warriors with 4 fin cores have skills, and these skills trigger special phenomena. With her eyes sparkling and calling Aang incredible, the girl asks if he's a 5-fin warrior. As he stands up, our protagonist thinks that he could clearly feel the strength of the 2-fin demon in his body, but he felt much more powerful than that. He quickly responds that he is just a 2-fin core warrior, and that his abilities are just a little more special. The girl replies that being a warrior of that level is incredible too, and in any case, she wants to thank him for saving her life, to which the boy simply replies that it's fine. He also says that anyway, he needed to go to the nearest city and asks if the girl knows how to get there. The girl, sad and downcast, says she knows but asks if Aang could take her. The young man finds this request strange and responds that they just met and don't even know each other's names, questioning whether the girl really trusts him. The girl begins to explain that the nearest city is Manhwa, a very small rank C city. She informs him that even so, the city was taken over by the Silver Wolves a few days ago. Her group, the Brand Weapon, tried to rescue the city but failed, and all of her companions were captured. They only had one chance to win, but they didn't know that the leader of the Hunter group had recently become a 3-fin core warrior, which greatly increased his strength. She also says that the leader of their group was a 2-fin core warrior, and he couldn't fight against the enemy warrior. She was the only one who managed to escape. Finally, the girl says that if rescuing the city wouldn't interfere with the boy's plans, she was asking if he could help her. In his mind, the boy thinks that in his previous life, despite the Hunter group appearing, they were never capable of doing such ridiculous things to a city. The woman then explains that the reason the Silver Wolf Hunter group wanted this city was because they wanted to take the energy crystal, but she doesn't know why. Upon hearing this, the young man becomes extremely interested, thinking that he couldn't believe a small hunter group dared to take the energy source in a city. Aang asks the girl to take him there and says that any one of the events she just mentioned was enough to make him furious with these hunters. After some time, we find ourselves out of the desert in a valley of the mountains. Our protagonist and the girl from earlier are heading toward the city that was taken over by the hunters, and knowing the way, the girl is guiding Aang. After parking in a spot in the forest to hide the car, the young man thinks that this is one of the cities he had no information about in his previous life. He also tells himself that this is Sanhwa City, which was taken by the Silver Wolf Hunter group, those damned wretches who will die. Aang says he's going in to check the situation inside the city, but he doesn't notice that behind him, a finless beast is ready to attack him. The girl, who was near our protagonist, tries to warn him that several demons are charging at him, but she is too far to protect him. However, suddenly from the ground, several tree roots emerge and grab all the creatures, preventing them from attacking our protagonist. He slams all the monsters into the ground, immobilizing the creatures and stopping them from making any more moves. At that moment, the young man says he won't kill those demons because it will only attract more. And looking at the girl behind him, the young man states that it's time for them to go. The girl, on the other hand, is extremely happy about this, and her eyes begin to shine, impressed by Aang's abilities. The young woman thinks that he was extremely strong, and now she was happy because she had hopes of avenging her companions. Hidden in the middle of the forest and looking at the gate, the boy says that it was strange as he couldn't believe there were no guards protecting that city. At that moment, someone begins to pass through the gate with someone else in their arms as if fleeing. An older man, who seemed to be running with his son, was begging for help until some other humans appeared behind him. These hunters immediately capture him and pin the poor man down, slamming his face into the ground. The girl, who was armed, quickly points her rifle at those bastards, intending to protect that family. However, Aang interrupts her, saying that doing so would reveal their location, so she should stop. From the gate of that fortress, a gigantic hand emerges. The grotesque hand grabs the unconscious father and son and pulls them inside. Seeing this, the girl and Aang become extremely apprehensive, realizing that there was a demon inside the city. Our protagonist thinks that if there's a demon there, they can't use the original plan to attack. Therefore, the new idea was to save them one by one. In the blink of an eye, Aang simply disappears, leaving the girl extremely confused. Aang immediately knocks out the two silver wolf hunters who were in front of the gate. The girl runs after him, asking the boy to wait for her. She thinks that Aang managed to take down the silver wolf hunters with one strike, and that was incredible. However, looking down, she notices something strange. The two hunters had decayed skin, as if they had been dead for a few days. Looking ahead, she also notices that there were several hunters from that group inside the city. However, Aang was passing through all of them and attacking without hesitation. Our protagonist thinks that they are all corpses being controlled by a demon with a special ability, and since that was the case, he no longer had any need to show mercy. In the blink of an eye, the young man ends the lives of all those people. The boy thinks they are probably being controlled by that black thread, the aura connected to the heads of the dead. Aang also states that it seemed like he needed to find the demon based on the auras of those corpses. He then tells the girl that he's going to save the father and son now and take the opportunity to see if there are others alive in the city, and the girl agrees. In the blink of an eye, he knocks out another person and immediately flies off in one direction. Aang manages to jump from house to house and get close enough to the city's central castle. Upon arriving at the door, he sees that it was probably from there that all that aura was being emitted. Without thinking, the boy kicks the door, breaking it down and making it fly open. Looking inside, he notices that the father and son were already lifeless. Aang, furious, activates his demonic form and says he arrived too late. In front of him, he comes face to face with an extremely terrifying demon. The creature says that everything in that city belongs to her, whether alive or dead, and her plan was to toy with that father and son, but they tried to flee the city, and that crossed the line. The monster tells Aang to come closer, as she wanted to see her new visitor. Our protagonist, looking in that direction, notices that there were 3 energy crystals behind the creature, and she was probably drawn there because of them. The creature, like the others Aang had encountered, asks if the boy is a demon or a human. Irritated, he simply does nothing and only grinds his teeth in anger. Looking at the creature's chest, the boy instantly realizes that it was a rare purple core, and purple core demons have the ability to create illusions. He finally speaks and tells the demon that the group of hunters is probably already dead, as even their leader with a 3-fin core doesn't compare to the demon. Upon hearing this, the creature, for some reason, remembers something. The monster turns around, giving a command, and a figure dashes toward our protagonist. Aang sees the attack coming in the blink of an eye and becomes confused. We then see that the one who made the attack was the 3-fin core warrior, the former leader of the Silver Wolves, who was also already dead. After defending himself from that attack, the young man is thrown several meters away by the power of the strike. Looking back, Aang realizes that in addition to him, there were several hunters from that army ready to attack him. The demon begins to summon all those people, saying that there was a new guest present. Seeing this, our protagonist thinks that not only was the hunter group there, but also all the warriors of that city who were part of the monster's army. Laughing, the creature welcomes Aang to its party, and we see that it was accompanied by several corpses. The entire army standing beside the 3-fin creature charges at Aang to finish him off. In his mind, Aang acknowledges that a 3-fin demon would be too much for him, as he only had 2, and if this demon were a normal one, he might have faced a bigger problem. But fortunately, this was a purple core demon, inexperienced in battles but skilled in illusions to control the flow of the fight. The young man uses his newly acquired core power to summon a flame around his arm. He creates a whirlwind of fire that defeats all the corpses around him, incinerating them. Seeing this, the creature states that he wasn't a normal human and that it wanted to fight Aang. The only thing our protagonist does is boast about using his fire to burn all of his enemies' corpses. The demon, seeing this, becomes enraged, as all those were its treasures, extremely difficult to collect. Aang retorts that, although it might be a little disrespectful to them, leaving all those bodies under the control of that cursed demon would be far worse. So with his dagger in hand and in the blink of an eye, Aang appears in front of the demon. The boy attacks the creature several times while stating that its battle strength had significantly decreased. Now for the final strike, the only thing he needed to do was destroy the monster's core. However, in a ruthless move, the demon uses the body of a child as a shield. Seeing this, our protagonist can't bring himself to attack, fearing he might hurt the child. Noticing his enemy's hesitation, the demon lands a direct hit to Aang's stomach, sending him flying backward. He also tries to land another blow on the boy, but this time the young man manages to dodge it. Far from his enemy, Aang becomes frustrated by the pain in his abdomen and says that luckily he was able to avoid a serious injury with his water elemental powers. The creature says it didn't just control that element, and also reveals it had an affinity with the wood element. Hearing this, Aang is impressed and becomes tempted by that core. He uses his wood element to heal his abdomen. The beast states that seeing how strong Aang was, it would have to risk everything to destroy him, and for that, it would use something that was incredibly difficult to obtain. The creature asks the father of the child to bring something, and he hands over a greenish cylinder. While taking it from the human's hand, the demon admits it couldn't believe it was using both the son and the father for evil purposes. It brings the cylindrical object close to its mouth, and although Aang doesn't know what it is, he instinctively feels that it would be dangerous to let the demon consume it. Without finishing healing, he grits his teeth from the pain and charges forward to stop it. The young man uses a fire sword to try to pierce the demon, but it's too late, and it swallows the object. The creature uses this new power to summon a purple shield around itself. Aang quickly retreats to one of the nearby pillars. The boy doesn't understand why the demon left and then returned instantly, wondering where it got that burst of energy from. Upon closer inspection, the young man realizes that the monster was forcefully extracting energy from the crystals, and he can't believe it, as that energy was chaotic, refined, and compressed by humans. He also states that if the demon absorbs energy directly from the crystal, its body will definitely explode, a theory he had confirmed in the past. The creature doesn't seem to have suffered any effects and continues to absorb the energy from the crystals on its back. The young man notices that the energy within the demon's body was still chaotic, but had stopped at a certain limit. He questions if this was because of that remedy, but remains confused, as that thing definitely wasn't created by demons. The creature begins to claim that it had evolved and a purple aura covers its entire body. Seeing this, Aang realizes that the demon had indeed used the energy from the crystal to force its evolution. We then see that the former three-finned demon has transformed into a four-finned creature, this time with a feminine appearance. Our protagonist is shocked and immediately realizes he's in deep trouble. The creature, on the other hand, is completely delighted with its new discovery and newfound power. It quickly creates several dark energy spheres and launches them at our protagonist, who is in the air. The spheres pass by Aang, who doesn't understand the attack, so the monster uses its sharp golden claw wind ability. Seeing this, Aang tries to protect himself using his wood ability. Sharp micro-explosions burst from the spheres, but Aang manages to create a wooden cocoon around himself. The demon, not wanting to let our protagonist defend himself, charges at him to break it. With a simple kick, it rips Aang out of his cocoon, saying it wasn't a good idea for him to keep hiding. After that kick, Aang is thrown to the ground, taking a massive hit. A cloud of smoke rises everywhere, obscuring the view for a moment. We see our protagonist lying on the ground, completely beaten and broken. The demon, not letting him think much, lands on top of him, pinning Aang's arms down with its legs. While immobilizing Aang, the creature says it's now certain that he can see how each fin makes a huge difference in power, but still, it likes Aang. Because of this, it says it will take the boy as one of its collectibles. Then its arm, which once had hands, turns into a sharp blade, and it prepares to stab Aang. The boy sees the tip of the blade coming toward his head and remains motionless, unable to react. For some reason, the blade suddenly stops, and a distortion in space begins to occur. Several portals appear around the creature, spinning as if someone were causing them. Aang is completely confused and wonders what is happening to him. Time and space continue to warp around the two for some unknown reason. From one of the portals, a terrifying hand emerges and grabs the four-finned demon by the head. A woman steps out of that portal and says she can't let a secondary character like the four-finned demon interfere with her plans. The demon realizes that it's the Dark Queen, but at that moment, the woman uses an ability called Compress. The demon's head begins to be pulled into another dimension, and like a black hole, it sucks in its entire body. The four-finned demon simply vanishes, disappearing completely from this world as if it never existed. The woman lands on the ground and takes the core of that creature as if to hand it to Aang. She says that she really couldn't rely on those useless humans since he almost died to that weak being. That creature holds the demonic core in her hand while looking down at our fallen protagonist with disdain. Sensing the overwhelming aura of that being, Aang states that the creature had 8 fins, just like the red being that resides within him. Immediately, he refuses to believe that another 8-finned demon is standing right before him. The creature says that if she had left things as they were, she would never know when the red-finned king would awaken. And Aang's inability to defeat a 4-finned demon was something tragic. Looking at the boy, she declares that humans really are an inferior race. The woman raises her finger and says she can't even believe that the boy is the strongest of humanity, given how slowly he's evolving. Irritated by this, the unknown woman uses a spell to levitate our protagonist's body in the air as if preparing to do something to him. The girl asks Aang to be a good boy and evolve into a 4-finned demon immediately, or he wouldn't survive situations like this. She prepares to use the demonic core and without hesitation uses her spatial magic to force the core into our protagonist's chest. The boy, with that force, is thrown backward and quickly falls to his knees on the ground. He thinks that crazy woman just shoved the 4-finned demon's core directly into his chest without even thinking, and that was terrible. However, he says that if he skips the 3rd fin evolution stage and jumps directly to the 4th, something will go wrong. His body begins to have a reaction to the core, and Aang starts screaming in pain as veins bulge from his body. With that, he tells the demon that he's going to explode since his chest can no longer handle that power. The creature can't believe that the young man is truly so weak that he can't even absorb the power of a 4-fin core. With his body close to exploding, he says he can't take it anymore and is about to burst as his body won't survive. Aang orders the woman to think of something to help him, and at that moment, she uses the 8-spirit lock, trapping Aang's body with something resembling glass. The girl comments that she has locked and sealed the space around him and calls him human trash. The boy begins to be squeezed by the space she created, while his body continues to feel like it's about to explode. At that moment, the crimson 8-fin demon begins to awaken, irritated that his rest was interrupted. Upon hearing his voice, the young woman immediately realizes who it is and becomes happy. The 8-fin demon takes control and starts dominating the rebellious 4-fin core. He questions whether the queen of the obsidian fin had forgotten what he had taught her before. With ease, he breaks the shell around spacetime and shortly after, assumes his standard form, freeing himself from the girl's spell. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.